Feels like a very low tone.
It does feel like Let's get my papers up and then we start. I'm Rachel, by the way, Rachel Hobley.
Oh, I think I've put those off. I think so.
You've got some.
Very kind of Thank you then.
Okay.
Have you just got A? I haven't got all of that.
No. Okay.
I've got this bit there.
I'll be reading out most of the bits on the agenda anyway, so,
Okay.
so hopefully you'll be able to follow it. Okay. Right, so welcome to this evening's meeting, Climate Emergency Standing Committee, Parish Council. So obviously I'd like to welcome two people over there who invited under public question time to because we haven't got anyone else from the public to talk about other things. So we'll move straight on to members of the public applying to be co-opted onto the standing committee should introduce themselves here. So if you could introduce yourselves, that'd be lovely. Okay.
Yep, I'm Dan Charlesworth. Is there anything in particular you want to know?
Just I guess why you'd like to become part of the committee and just what you I guess why you'd like to be part of climate emergency.
Okay, so yeah, Darren Charlesworth, live in Scold. Very interested to understand how the council is responding to the climate emergency, what kind of action is being taken. We're a long-standing interest in that. My wife and I both group coordinators for Citizens Climate Lobby, which is interested in influencing our own elected politicians, like Jason campaign in this area for Power 9, to find out what they're going to do in relation to climate action, understanding the policy responses, and also suggesting policy responses. I don't think it's directly related, but it's an area of interest. I work for a bank, and the bank has climate policies, and I'm also part of a climate action network within the bank, in which employees also try to influence and increase the ambition of the bank to take action. Yeah. And as part of that, I'm also training as a climate risk, or about to start training as a climate risk specialist. So it's also that's of great interest to me and has been for a long time. And that's my motivation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mine is, as you would imagine, because we're married, very similar to Darren's. We both run the Yorkshire and Humber Citizens Climate Lobby group, and we're very active in that. And I suppose, in addition to what Darren's already said, I also run a business in Home Firth. So I have that sort of aspect of it that I'm interested in too.
Yeah.
And within that business, I meet a lot of people, I have a lot of contact with lots of different people. It's the business I've got is Cocoon, the Wellbeing Centre. So me and my business partner Jackie are very keen on everything to do with climate, the planet, everything generally. And everybody that comes to our place it's like a community of like-minded people in that respect. So so I suppose I've just got that different aspect that motivates me to want to join.
Super. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I don't know how much you know about. I don't know how much Jen's told you know already about what this committee sort of does really. Because effectively it was set up after in 2019 the parish council declared a climate emergency, and then that led to then the establishment of this committee. I think it was early 2020.
Yeah, I was surprised when I was reading through. For some reason, I just thought it had been going a lot longer than that.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all those sort of declarations sort of started during 2019 in various local councils. I think.
Yeah.
Kirklees certainly declared one around the same time. I think from memory. So it was brought to us basically by members of the public, who came to the council and said, look, we really want you to take climate emergency seriously and see what you can do as parish council. So that then led to a number of sort of events and working groups, if you like, which has then emerged into this committee. And as part of that, there was a climate emergency action plan developed, which I don't know if you've had sight of. But that's on our website, and we can sort of point you in the right direction, and then Jen will be able to share it with you. And that's effectively sort of our aspiration for what we want to do to make the valley net zero by 2030.
Yeah.
And this committee is really sort of, I guess, coordinating the desire to encourage the community to and work with partners to deliver that action plan. That's really sort of where the committee comes from. So from its very start, we've, unlike any of the other committees we've got, we've invited members of the public to become members of the committee as well, so that they bring expertise, interest, passion, whatever, related to how we can effectively deliver that action plan. Because it's recognised that the parish council in itself, we haven't actually got that many levers to pull in terms of making things happen, but we can influence things, and that's what we've been trying to do. And one of the key things is that the parish council made a commitment to fund a member of staff, which is Michelle here, to help to play that coordinating role and bring people together, support the conversations, build the website with Home Valley Climate Action Partnership. So it's all been trying to sort of build that spirit of we all within the Home Valley need to work together to actually make this happen. So that's kind of a bit of context.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I think over recent years we've had sort of representatives from people who've been part of Home Firth Transition Town, or people who've been involved who maybe work in renewable energies, or we've had a range of different people. Someone who worked for or set up work for, I don't know, Zero Carbon Yorkshire. So people who've got sort of already got an interest and have actually got some views to share, which is really useful, and obviously networks to then spread information outwards again. So it's kind of, the idea is then, rather than us as councillors just having our knowledge, it's a way of bringing the community in on it and getting that expertise to use. So that's a bit of context. So thank you very much for introducing yourselves, and thank you for coming along. So I think my screen has just gone enormous for some reason. Right. So I think we just need to, as you'll find with parish council things, as with all local government, there are various procedural things that have to happen in the first instance, and then we can formally vote to appoint you to the committee, assuming you still want to do that. And then we've obviously got an agenda which we're going to work through, and also. But the way it works is the members of the public, the members of the committee, obviously are all part of the conversation on all the items. But in terms of voting for decisions, that is just retained for the elected councillors. So at the moment, there's three of us here. So I don't know, Andy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Andy Wilson. I represent the ward of Upperthorne. I'm probably the newest one. Yeah,
You are, yeah.
So I don't know what I'm doing.
You'll only very fast now.
I've lived in the Home Valley near, I don't know, getting up 40 years, I guess, so I'm nearly being accepted, I think. Quite keen on all things to do with climate change, and I try and put that into practice as much as I can on my own carry on. So this fits quite well with my thinking, this committee.
So I'm Sarah Sheard, and I represent Honley Central. Yeah, my main passion is to do with the climate, and I think about it 24/7 and feel very disheartened about the state of things, probably like yourself.
Constant conversations in our house, isn't it? And we have 3 daughters who are all very passionate about it as well. Our youngest daughter's doing social policy at Queen's Uni at the moment, in the hope she might sort the government out, but
Well, it's
Yeah.
completely ripping up sort of things that were going to be positive, you know, with the government. It's all been torn up, and yeah, it's quite heartbreaking.
How
So,
long have you been part of this?
well, since it was set up
Right.
in 2017.
Well,
Yeah.
2020,
Yeah, but I was involved with sort of Friends of the Earth campaigning in the town hall to sort of pass the climate emergency within Kirklees Council. So I was active in pressure groups. Yeah.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Shall I explain who I am?
Yes,
properly?
please.
So my job title is Climate Emergency Coordinator. When the action plan was put together, it's everybody is a volunteer that wasn't, councillors are as well, not employed. And this council was very forward thinking and decided that they needed somebody to actually make all the things happen that were put into the plan. And they picked out certain things to be pushed forward. So my role initially was to actually make things happen. And so that's what I've done so far. And then we've come to a point now where we've done a lot of the bigger things. We've got to look at what's the next stage. So that's what we'll find out about as we go through the meeting today.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll just finally introduce myself. Rachel Hogley, so I'm currently chair of this committee. I've been parish councillor for nearly 8 years. So obviously when I first started as parish council, everyone was really talking about climate emergency in terms of the council's focus. And I represent Homeford Central. But to be honest, which areas you represent is sort of incidental. We're all part of representing the Home Valley. That's the point really. And I think my focus on this committee is about identifying the tangible things that we can really make a difference with. Because what I don't want this committee to be is just a talking shop. We'll almost hang our heads and go, oh no, it's just all too difficult. And it's about identifying those ways in which we can influence, educate, inspire, all those things with the levers that we do have. And we'll come on to talk about that a bit later, because some bits of the agenda we're talking about potential future direction of the committee. Okay, so I will move on to the next item. Everyone's happy with that? So, hang on, sorry, did we need to do apologies first?
Well,
We need to do public bodies. Yes, public bodies, sorry. So we've got item 15, which is Public Bodies Act, which is basically to ask if anyone wants to record the meeting. It's currently being recorded anyway at the back there. It goes on our YouTube channel for those members of the public who wish to watch it afterwards. But does anyone else want to record it separately? No. Okay, thank you. And then we'll call it 15A, shall we? Apologies.
We will call it 15A.
There's normally an item that says apologies.
Starts with my apologies because I left off the apologies I left on the agenda.
So we have had apologies from.
We've had a number of apologies. They've been emailed out.
Sorry.
Yeah, they have been emailed out to all the councillors, but and the reasons for absence as well. So usually, I think I emailed them out to other members as well, but I haven't emailed you on this occasion. If you become members, you'll receive them in advance.
So the way it works with apologies now is apologies get sent with, obviously someone gives apologies, but they have to give a reason why they can't attend, particularly relevant councillors rather than members, but obviously it's good to see as well.
Yeah.
And then we review them and make sure there's, we're happy that there's a reason given. So I'm happy to approve the apologies, but
Yeah.
happy with that, sorry?
Yeah.
And we're expecting Darryl
Darryl
Gould, who is another councillor on the committee, to come a bit late because he's been caught up with work. Okay, so hopefully we will see him soon. So the next item is the election of members to the Climate Emergency Standing Committee. So that's for yourselves. There are currently 6 available spaces. Right,
I put them 7 actually, and I think I put that down wrong. So
okay.
I'll double check on that, but there are definitely more
There are
than 2
available
available
spaces,
spaces.
Been very busy with all these rearranged meetings following the morning period.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
can they be elected any time throughout the year, or is it just a specific?
Well, they can
time?
be, while there's spaces, they can be elected any time during the year, but obviously it needs to be at one of these meetings. Yeah.
We don't have that many.
Pardon?
We don't have that many of these meetings.
No, but if you do know of any other people, that'd be great.
Okay, so, would someone like to propose, that, or I'll do it, might as well. Can I propose that Darren Charlesworth and Helen Charlesworth are both appointed to the committee? All those in favour, please? Welcome to the committee. And thank you for,
Sorry to interject, but can you give an indication about how many people normally attend these meetings approximately? Because this looks really small.
yeah, it does look really small. Yeah, to be fair, there are normally at least another 4 people. But in part, because of the Queen's morning period, lots of meetings have to be postponed and rearranged.
Yeah.
So certainly from a council's perspective, I find my diary sort of fills with the council meetings and then fit other things round to some extent. I'm not sure if everybody does that, but maybe they do. So there was a sort of last minute change to the date of this meeting, which meant that councils in particular couldn't attend. So we do normally, I mean, to be fair, last year we had meetings with sort of about 14 people, 15 people, but this year it's declined slightly.
Normally they'd be on Monday. That's why I'm-
There would normally be an Monday,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Oh, here we are. Darryl.
Sorry, Mike.
Right, Darryl. We have just voted to have how many people here? Pamela Charlesworth and Darren Charlesworth. Be public members of the committee, Darryl.
Okay,
So,
welcome aboard then.
I don't know, Darryl, if you mind just saying, well, we might as well, since we've got time, just saying a couple of words about you.
About
So
me?
so they know who you are.
Yes, I am Darren Gould, I'm a local resident. I am a member of the Green Party, been a member of this committee since it started, so yeah. Very enthused to keep it going, so there we go.
Okay. Super. Right. Thank you, Darryl, and welcome. So, next item is for members and officers to declare any personal disclosable pecuniary interests on the agenda. Does anyone have any? This is just if anyone had financial interests in what we're talking about. So, okay. So, none of those. And I assume we haven't had any details.
report, no.
Okay, thank you. DPR, by the way, stands for disclosable pecuniary interest.
No worries.
Okay, items on the agenda to be discussed in private session. I'm not sure there were any that I saw. That again is just where if there's something that we think ought to be discussed confidentially rather than recorded, but it's pretty unusual to be honest. It's usually for some of our other meetings. It's kind of standard thing. Okay, so the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 27th of June. So, can I ask members to approve the minutes of that meeting, please?
Yes.
Anyone like to approve those? Okay, super, thank you. Sorry, I'm just going to stop my phone before it's on the panel. It's really annoying. Apologies. Right, so progress and action. So we've sort of divided the agenda into a series of sections, just for ease of what we're talking about. So the first one is a bit of an update on some of the things that we've been busy doing. So the first one, item 21, is Jubilee Seeds and Tree Planting Project. So this is the Planting Seeds to Save the Bees project that we've been doing for the Queen's Jubilee. We've effectively done all the delivery of bee bombs to every primary school child in Home Valley. That all went very well, and I did a report at the last meeting about how that went, and the assemblies, all good. And we're now at the stage of each of the schools was asked to produce a poster celebrating the taking part in the project. Those have now been, the winners have been awarded, and thank you to Councillor Wilson for helping collect those and judge them. And those posters are now being turned into sort of printed posters, and collecting them later this week, in fact, which is marvellous. So there will be a framed copy of the poster going to each school, and the children who designed the posters will also get a copy of the the poster, if you like. So we're kind of at the stage of getting that all collated together, so that then in November, the tree planting bit happens, which is basically planting a tree. It'll be something like a rowan or a willow tree, so a reasonably small, manageable sized tree suitable for school grounds. So there'll be a tree planted in each of the schools, all the primary schools, and in 2 secondary schools as well in the valley. And that will be accompanied by a little plaque that says it's part of, well, the Planting Seeds Save the Bees project, but also that it's part of the Queen's Green Canopy, which is like a nationwide tree planting across the country, and it will mean there's a pin on the map. You can see it's part of a nationwide canopy. So, so the intention is to visit the schools in November to do the tree planting. So we can do the tree planting through the summer because it's the wrong time of year to plant the trees. So I would just ask if anyone would like to be part of visiting the schools and planting the trees.
Yeah,
Please. Just let me know.
yes.
In November.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Because I'm going to be contacting the schools shortly to try and arrange times.
I assume it's a bit more than just giving them a tree and leaving them to it.
Yeah, it will be a basically the intention is to go to each school and we'll probably spend maybe half an hour there, won't be longer than that. Planting the tree, putting in the little stakes, getting a photo of probably head teacher, ideally, maybe a couple of children, all sorts of exciting picture of the teacher, but maybe a combination, and then one of us, so that then we've got something that we can publicise afterwards. That look, this is what's
I
happening.
have to say, I know nothing about gardening or trees.
Well,
If it was repairing a car, I'm okay.
well, to be honest, it's fairly simple planting trees.
You dig a hole and you put it in.
Well, to be fair,
To say, no, you shouldn't have put it there, well.
well, we're putting, the trees are being sourced from the Woodland Trust,
Yeah.
and they have guidance as to how you plant the trees. But to be fair, personally, I planted trees in a field. Was it about a year and a half ago now? That we own, and I was taught how to do it by the home connections, about turning the sod and that stuff.
But presumably the schools will want to put it in a particular place.
Yeah. Well, when they were approached for the whole distribution of bee bombs, that was part of the agreement. They all said whether they would be willing to have a tree and where, and they'd give some thought as to where it would go. So I need to remind them of that, obviously. But I'd always said it was sort of it's quite nice because then there's two bites of the relationship, if you like, with the schools. And so the intention is when we go back to plant the tree, it's also an opportunity to present the poster about the project, and again do publicity on the back of it and get those photos so that then we'll be sort of late November, do a bit of a kind of look for the celebrating the Queen's Jubilee. This is what we did. Just remind people. So I don't think there's, other than obviously ask people to support that, I don't think there's a lot more to update on that. I
The
think.
other thing is, you mentioned publicity.
Yeah.
So, where? Because we have it on the website, obviously.
Yeah.
Is it HG9 that you put the council?
Tito.
Tito.
Yeah, Tito.
So I guess it'll go in there.
Yeah.
And so, do you want me to write the piece? Is what I was going to ask about it, to go in there, or will that be Deputy Clerk Rich?
It's usually me, but
Oh, okay.
be lovely if you did.
Right, okay. And then other than that, we haven't really got anywhere. We've got the Huddersfield Examiner and the Huddersfield Times.
Yeah.
That's it, because we no longer have Home Valley Review.
Oh, is that gone?
Yeah, that's gone.
Oh, I haven't seen it for ages.
Yeah, that would be why. And then, but there's the two other local magazines that I've sourced now, Walldale and Hay Edge, is it? No,
It's
not
Hay-
Walldale.
There's Hayden's Breeze, there's Honley Flyer,
Honley Flyer.
and there's
Hepworth Focus. I think there's some other ones as well.
Flyer.
There's a couple
That
of
captures a few schools, isn't it?
Hepworth, what's it called, Hepworth?
Hepworth Flyer.
Honley Flyer.
Oh, sorry, Hepworth Focus.
And then, what's this one? Sorry, my brain's out. Hay Edge.
Hayden's Breeze, I think it's called. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, the loss of the Home Valley Review is a bit of a pain because it was something that was reasonably well distributed through the valley.
And red because it was bite sized, so it was nice little people picked it up in the supermarket.
Yeah.
So it's gone.
Is it Cornwall only one silver right now? That's similar, isn't it? Saddleworth, isn't it?
It was Saddleworth one, but that's different.
I know
Yeah.
it's no use,
Yeah.
but there were.
Yeah, that,
there
well,
were
that's, I
licenses
think,
that
well,
were
the
case.
Saddleworth, I think, is Saddleworth Independent, whereas the Home Valley Review was part of the Barnsley Chronicle,
Barnsley.
Oh, is it?
and they just, I think, in the
Just
printing
called the
costs were
club.
too high, and they couldn't get the advertising in.
Mm.
But it was sort of left in abeyance for a while, and then I don't think it's ever formally been announced as closed.
It hasn't.
But the two ladies who did most of the copywriting got in contact, I think, with
Yeah.
with various local people and said, actually, we're not hearing anything from
Yeah,
Barnsley
they
Chronicle, we
already
can't do
said
it
no.
anymore because they were freelance supporting
Yeah.
it. So unfortunately that's gone. But I think also, to be fair, with the schools, there's the opportunity to, and I'll work with you, Michelle, on how we best do that. But again, when we went to the schools with the information about planting the seeds, we did a poster that, well, not poster, it was an A4 piece of information about why it's important and a bit of background on the project. And there's an opportunity to just do a kind of refreshed version which reflects perhaps on the more on the trees element and gives a few facts and figures that then again we can ask the schools to send out through their networks. So that's a good opportunity just to, I mean again, I know as a parent of 3 kids you get an awful lot of stuff from school, but even if a small proportion open all those attachments and see one, then it still reinforces the message.
Major of the schools have their own websites, don't they, and Facebook pages.
Yeah, they do.
And Hall is particularly active at the moment, I don't really notice.
No.
Every day I think there's something posted.
Oh, right, okay. Well, that must be on.
They're very good at doing their own code stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think some schools are very, I mean, to be fair, there's several schools that are very forward on green matters particularly. Yeah, Hepworth's one of them, I think Home School is another. And, but others are a little bit less, they've got a lot of things to do. So hopefully this can bring it up on their agenda again. So, I don't think there's anything else that we need to clarify on that.
Just one other thing I just thought of, because I know that the Homefield Library now has that big screen, isn't it, revolving with lessons.
Yeah, great idea.
Poking yourself in the eye.
Okay, so the next item, if it's not far, leave the car campaign. So this was to talk about the fact that we've got an earmark reserve, so we set aside £1,000 for further roll up out of the campaign. So at the moment there's the poster that shows where you can get to, if you like, in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, etc. from the middle of Holmfirth, and there's a desire to do something similar for Honley. So if I can just ask Michelle to give any update on where we're at with updating things.
Yeah, so June, who's head of Honley Business Association, I've asked her to come back to me with where she thinks you could walk to Honley Central from in the neighbourhood, because I needed somebody local. So I'm just trying to find the maps so that you can see it, because this means nothing to you without context. Sorry, I meant you, sorry.
These haven't been published yet, have they?
No, not properly, no.
I've just not seen anything about it.
Because this whole campaign started during the pandemic, and where people weren't allowed to walk anywhere. So, and we wanted to put posters up in bars and you know, anywhere that people would see it, to say you could have actually walked here rather than taking a car. So that's where we're at now. We're going to start doing that. So yes, I've spoken to June at Honley Business Association, and so she's going to give me a list of the names, and then we'll get it designed by Holland Agency, and it will, everything that we talk about is on the Home Valley Climate Action website, so you can download it all these posters and everything. And so yeah, and then we'll go from there basically. And then the next stage is, I didn't really want to start putting the posters out in we have this challenge that everything seems to be Holmfirth centric, and yet we've got Honley as well. So we didn't want to start doing a massive publicity just on Holmfirth without Honley, because we'll just get people going, what about Honley?
Yeah.
So once the posters have been designed, we put them out. And the whole concept of this is, like we said, it tells you how far it is, it tells you how many steps you are, so you can award yourself a gold, bronze, silver, and then it just says, you know.
So why are we waiting? Can't we just put them out as we get them? Can't we do them in Holmfirth and then Honley and then where?
We would have done them in Holmfirth already, but because of everything that happened with the
So
pandemic,
when can we do them in Holmfirth then?
well, might as well. I I'm doing them both at the same time because you know what we get the negativity. So this is what I was just explaining. So this is going to be done in the next couple of
Can't
weeks.
do it as soon as we have some, just get on with it.
Yeah, but it has more of an impact if you do it across the Home Valley. So whether you're based in Honley or Home Firth, you've then got you see the same image.
It'll be repeated.
Well, if it's continuous and ongoing, it doesn't really matter.
Well, I've made the decision that I'm doing it this way. Okay. And it will be happening quite soon because it's been a case of trying to find the person that can help us with the Honley bit. That was the only, it was going to happen before with just Home Firth, but because of the delay, I made the decision that we'll do it all at the same time. And then we can roll it out as though people we don't. When you do anything in anywhere, you always find somebody else has something to complain about. So let's try and avoid it. Is the idea. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else for me to say on that really, is there?
Okay, I think one thing that you and Andy at some point
Oh,
were
yeah,
talking about
bike
is potentially doing a bike
Yeah.
thing.
So it's about bike instead of the car, cycling or walking. So we're going to do something in the spring because, as Andy quite well pointed out, nobody's going to be doing any cycling so much. Might walk, but they won't cycle in this weather.
Yeah.
So we're going to do something in the spring, and the idea was to do an event. So and that's why it's got to be coordinated because it might involve us having to close road just temporarily or something, just to do something together. But yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'd like to be clear about what we're trying to do and trying to achieve with it. Is it a cycling event as in just purely pleasure cycling, or are we trying to get people to
No,
cycle?
the whole point was it's
Or are we hoping that once it's still looking to do that?
the whole point of this exercise is to get people to their normal transport to take the car, to stop taking the car and walk and that. So it's not about leisure in that pursuit. It's about if functional journey. If you're going into to Home Firth to do that, yeah. As opposed to
Sometimes one swings it to the other though, doesn't it? I mean, I set off just cycling for pleasure, but actually once you get cycling, you think, well, actually I could cycle too.
yeah, but our campaign is about I would normally jump in the car to pop to Aldi, I'll
Yeah.
walk. And whether you decide you're going to go on a nice long ride afterwards.
We can go about it more, but that's probably a difficult thing to get into to start with.
Right, we'll
Easy to
talk
get
about
people
it. This isn't really
to
the
do
place
it.
to do it.
No,
We'll have our discussion.
I think we need to be clear about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it.
I think originally some of the things that were being toyed with was having a traffic-free day on Holygate, something like that, where people can walk, people can walk or cycle on there, or have the opportunity to test out electric bikes, for example, so that people understand actually they can be transformative for people. Well, it's like Sarah who use the electric bike to get all around the valley. And it was that sort of raising awareness of actually there are other options aside from getting in your car or
Yeah, we've done other things like when it was the art festival, a couple of people. What we haven't explained actually, when this got set up, we had a lot of people because everybody was assigned to different of the actions. So there was people that did transport, people that did energy, people that we didn't get somebody for business, by the way. So the people that were doing transport, they actually went and found all these walkways and gullies. Is that what you call them? Yeah. Ginnels and stuff that people used to use in the good old days, and we did, and they're all on the site as well. And the whole idea about that was that we were saying to people, instead of getting your car and going to the Art Week fringe things, here's some passageways, and we actually worked out maps so people could actually go and walk on them instead. So that's where it was all coming from. But everything just went bang because there's this thing that happened.
So are we still looking at the option of closing Holygate and showing people?
That's
how to
what
do that?
Andy and I are going to be talking about because the words we used were bike festival. So part of it will be the closure of Holygate. It's getting all the people around that sell bikes and Albion cycles, all that sort of thing. And we've got all of the names, and we went down the path. We had a meeting just with cycling people and everything. All of this has happened, but unfortunately there was this lurgy came along, and so now we're sort of trying to rekindle it again.
Yeah, I think that said, it would be helpful if other members of the committee want to get involved in sharing ideas and coming up with ways in which this can happen. I think that would be very, very welcome.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the challenges with this committee is that because there's lots of different elements carrying on, we don't necessarily have the time within each committee meeting to discuss the kind of detail of each project, if there's a project or an event that's organised, but it's really helpful if people who say, well, actually I've got an interest in developing that into something, oh, I've got a great idea of this, how this would happen, if those people then put themselves forward and then can meet together with Michelle and go through the kind of, right, well, this is what, this is how it could work, these are the options, and then if there's any funding things that aren't already covered by the budget we've had, then obviously the committee would need to approve those, but obviously you need tangible ideas, because I think there's often people come up with ideas for things, but it's about, as Andy says, having a, what's the purpose, what are we trying to achieve from it, and actually what are the steps to get there, and who would we need to talk to make it happen.
So looking on the back of that, looking at how few people there are here this evening compared to how very many there were when we first started, should we not be looking at ways to try and encourage more people to join the committee, be it councillors or public, rather than relying on the so few people that are here? And is it then a case of perhaps we need more, bigger public meetings or more meetings to go back to the public and so, because we're obviously doing something wrong because there just are not enough people here. So is it we're no longer engaging? Because
there's an item later on the agenda about the future of the committee and how it could best operate, which is probably the time to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know whether that will address the real issues then. Anyway, okay. I'll just voice a concern that we're doing something wrong somewhere.
Yeah, I'd like to support you in that, actually, yeah.
It's just getting to the frustrating stage where we don't seem to be doing anything and the word emergency seems to have gone out the window.
Okay, but I think one of the challenges is, what is it we think we can do?
Okay, right. So is the next discussion going to be maybe a change of focus on what we should be doing?
We can pick that up when, I suggest we discuss that when we talk about the future of the committee, because I think it's a completely fair point, so do bring it up at that point.
If there's just something wrong at the moment.
Okay, so did anyone want to though get involved in, who's not already involved in the It's Not Far Leave the Car campaign? Or maybe let Michelle know if you do want to.
Maybe put forward all the options of things to get involved with and then we can pick and choose.
Right, okay, but things only happen if people.
Well, that's how when we maybe discuss where is the committee going, we can say, well, how can people get involved, then we can pick and choose.
Yeah, okay. Right, we'll move on to the next item, which is Business and Community Group Database Update. So this is basically a key part of what Michelle's been doing recently, which is pulling together a database of organisations, so it's community groups and organisations and also businesses in the valley, because one of the key things that the effectiveness of any committee, and indeed the parish council in itself, is being able to communicate with people and communicate messages, be they about, in this instance, climate emergency and what action people can take forward, sharing best practice, all that kind of thing, or indeed from the parish council's point of view, also being able to communicate with people about grants that are available, for example, and there's that challenge of managing to contact people, particularly given the void of effective media coordination, and we're in that weird world where there's an awful lot of communication but nobody hears any messages, and nobody tells me nothing. That's what people always say. So, Darragh, do you want to say something before Michelle talks something?
I'm just wondering whether the database putting together should be a climate emergency task, or maybe a communications task, or maybe a general council task.
Well, it's...
Because it doesn't strike me as being a climate emergency issue, it is just putting a database together so that we can then communicate.
That is true.
But is that, as you've just said, not a challenge that the council has? So should the full committee not be allocating resources rather than our...
Yes, it is, but we have a resource, which is our
But
emergency coordinator.
Should we not keep our resources to ourselves and not duplicate them? I can see...
But we're not duplicating, because it's not otherwise happening. Because our clerk and deputy clerk team do not have the resource with which to set up a database.
So we should be going back to the council saying the climate committee suggests, would very much like, an amount of resource to be put forward to a database, which can be put together for the benefit of all the committees, plus the council itself.
Yes, but each committee doesn't exist in a vacuum. So
No,
it's
but I don't
important
know.
that as a parish council, we effectively have 3 employed members of staff,
Well, I
because
don't
Michelle
see-
is one of them.
I don't see a task of the climate emergency committee.
Right, okay, I understand what you're saying. However, this came out of the whole issue of us not being able to contact people and communicate with them. We were doing social media.
That's, yeah, I understand.
Yeah, right, just let me finish what I'm saying there. Does that make
I
sense?
sat on the meeting where it was all discussed. I didn't really agree with it at the time.
So the issue is, we do a lot of stuff, but nobody hears about it. So it was identified that
That's
we have no ways,
isn't it?
Darryl, can you
we have no way of communicating with everybody that we would like to in the valley, businesses and community groups. So Home Valley Action Partnership, they had a little database of a few people that they talked to, and actually once you start getting people on board and saying, yeah, I'm happy for you to have the email, then we can start telling them what we're doing, and we can get them involved, and we can ask them to come and join the committee and everything. At the moment, we have about, I think, 30 emails to contact people with, or we hope they see the poster, they happen to look on social media when we do it and stuff like that. So that was where the database came from. And the idea is, then it was realised that actually the council could do with it, but actually in us trying to do what we're doing, it was even more important for us to have this facility. So
And
that's where it came
presumably communicating with more people
from. Exactly.
will raise your awareness, and then more people want to get involved with the committee.
That was the idea behind it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm working on. And so what the other side of the reason that what we thought of doing it is, it's given me an opportunity to go and speak to people and tell them about what we're doing, and then add them to the database. So for instance, I've mentioned Honey Business Association. She's actually contacting the whole of the Honey Business Association database and saying, are you happy to be added to this list? So then, as we have things now, I've got emails that I can send people things, but we didn't have anything before. We had the 35 from Home Valley Climate Action Partnership, which is like it's not a spin-off is the wrong word, but it's another group that, because they can apply for grants which the council can't. So all these green grants that are out there, we can put groups to go to them and then apply for them to get funding.
It developed at the same time as the development of the Climate Action Plan. It was recognised that actually local government can only access certain things, whereas community-led organisations have a far wider reach in terms of funding opportunities. So it was always recognised that you needed the benefit of having being able to employ someone in the first place, of the parish council having a role, but actually it then needed to work with other partners, and the way to do that was the development of Home Valley Climate Action Partnership. So there's sort of I think in the end there was a kind of memorandum of understanding between the two organisations that we would support each other and work together, which is why Michelle works with them, particularly on the website and things. So otherwise you end up with duplicated effort.
Yeah, and I totally understand the reasons why you need to do that, because the only way that I found out about this was through Moses Crook.
Yeah.
I contacted him about just generally, didn't I? And we were talking to him about the CCL lobbying, and he said, oh, you might be interested in this group. And I remember saying to you, gosh, there's this group in the Home Valley.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So I totally, and the one thing we said was about communication.
Yeah.
So that's
and
really good to
going
know
back
about
to another
working
point
on
that Darryl made earlier about we're doing something wrong and we lost a lot of people. Actually, the people that have stepped down have all got very, very valid reasons, including leaving the area and or retiring from doing as much as they should for health reasons and things like that. So it happened to all happen, and also because they were involved in these big projects and they've all happened now, so that their involvement wasn't required after we did things like auditing the civic hall and stuff like that.
We're finding at Cocoon that people are only just really starting to come back to group settings as well.
Yes.
There's still a lot of people still were very nervous about it, and we know when there's a wave going through the valley, because everything just drops off. So I think people are now starting to feel a little bit more confident. Certainly we did tonight, didn't we? We feel more confident about coming to a group setting now. So I think you've had a lot of other things to deal with.
It's been challenging.
And I think I'd say the other benefit that we see with having the database is that opportunity to sort of share. So rather than, it's not just us like preaching, if you like, it's more saying to people, and businesses in particular, what is it that you're doing? Tell us about it, and we can then share it with others. Because I think what we've seen in other parts of the parish council, and saying that I sit on our finance committee as well, and we get grants for people wanting to do things for community assets, for example. And recently we've had a number of grants for things like solar panels going on sports clubs. We've had things, people putting insulation in, people doing new boilers, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's reasons
And they're really, really positive. And if we can then share that out again and say, look, this hall here is managing to put in, all this sports club has put in solar panels, this is the impact it's had, then you can say, well, actually, have you thought about doing this? And there's that opportunity to just share knowledge and experience, or just get people talking to each other who didn't previously have that. And of course, it's sort of that chicken and egg thing. You need to actually spend the laborious time at the moment. I've seen Michelle doing that, pulling together all the contacts in the hope that then there's an opportunity to then gradually build more of a conversation in the valley about actually these are physical things or tangible things or costed things or evidence things you can do to your business or your community facility, because otherwise I think sometimes people just go, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, and the other thing is that, for instance, I've done some case studies with businesses and individuals of things they've done to be green in the valley, especially the business one. It's really good, the examples. But how do I tell anybody? It's like, unless they're already looking for it, they won't find it. You kind of were looking for something, an outlet to do it, and you found it. So this is the other idea behind the database, that we'll be able to say, right, here's a case study of companies and what they're doing, can you do the same? So we're kind of at a crest, because once we've got this up and running, then I think that's going to make a massive difference. And to your point, yes, it could be seen as a resource for that, but I actually cannot continue doing what I'm doing without actually being able to communicate it to people. There's no point in me doing it all. For instance, there's a carbon calculator on the site. The idea is that if you walk instead of taking a car, you can put it in and we can sort of see a figure to say, hey, look how much carbon emissions we've been saving these. There's loads of things going on, but there's no way of me telling anybody. Unless and what we found as well with events is we do events, but unless the people that came along were already interested, we weren't converting anyone, because the people that want to know go and find out, and people that probably were interested but wouldn't necessarily go aren't coming along to the events and stuff. So that's another thing that we're doing, is trying to go along to events that already exist. But I digress on that. But yeah, but being able to email somebody is like a massive thing. So that's why I'm working on it. Yeah. So the deadline for that, for me, to try and finish it, is by the end of November. And then the initial thing is, and this is what I need everybody's involvement in, is what's our first communication going to be, because we have to let people unsubscribe. So it's got to make them think, actually it's worth me staying here. So that's one of the other things as well. We talked about that before, didn't we?
Yeah. And I think the things, the kind of key messages that we wanted to get across are, there is an action, effectively it's around the action plan that was produced before, and sharing some of that good practice of things we already know is happening, because it does inspire people.
I'd love to have something like that in our shop as well. We often have booklets on different groups and organisations, and people sit in reception reading them. They take them from reception about, because they're just those sort of like-minded people as well, about the group and what you've done, who you've helped, what your plans are for the future. I don't know, something like that. Some sort of little.
I think it's also signposting some of the things that we've already got, like the energy efficiency booklet.
Yeah, there's a booklet that tells people how to save money on their houses and everything. But again, nobody really noticed there.
No.
The other thing is, we do try not to print stuff.
Yeah.
That, which is chicken. That's another difficulty, isn't it? Because people need to see
It is,
it.
because there's lots of people that come that they just don't use computers. So that's just how it is.
Yeah, it is. And in fact, especially the energy saving, the majority of people that need that are probably people that don't use computers. But anyway, so there's lots of stuff. If you go and look on that Home Valley Climate Action, one of the things about that is it's called that. It doesn't have any reference to the council, even though it is us doing it, because that's another thing. People can be negative because they think it's the council and everything. So we've made it like that, so it's everybody in the Home Valley, no matter who you are, you can put something on there. So it's a central point for the Home Valley, our climate action.
So are there any actions that we need to database for?
Just the email, the database, I've just got to keep plugging away at it. So amazing what I found out about some dodgy companies, though, I have to say to me.
Have you thought about doing an email list that businesses have that say at the top of it, would you be interested in the climate action group? And
Oh,
people
sorry, what
give
the
their names like a
Yes,
subscribe list.
There is a place on the website to do it, but we've actually paid to get a list of companies in Home Valley, and that's what I'm going through and cleaning up. And it had 1,000 odd businesses on it, and that's the first point. And then when I've deduped it with, oh, that it hasn't got B&B on it, or it hasn't got Red, or it hasn't got Cocoon on there because they're not a limited company or whatever, then I'm physically getting in touch with all of them once I've gone through this list and cleaned that up. So that's why it's a massive job. So I already started off with, I've got up to 420 now. So, so yeah, so I'm plowing on through because sometimes most of them haven't got an email address on it, even though you're paying for a database, but databases are generally not very good. So. But at least I've got the name of the company to start from.
I'm just thinking about, you know, when you go to events and you can subscribe to somebody's newsletter.
Oh yeah, that we've got
If we
that.
had something like that in Cocoon,
Okay, yeah, we can do that for you.
people could just fill in their name and their email address and that they want to subscribe.
Yeah, when we go to events, we took an iPad and we type it in.
Yeah, that's a similar thing, but yeah.
And it's on the website that people can do it, but yeah, we can give pieces of paper and everything, but yeah, not a problem to do that.
Okay, so the next item is about the Home Valley Climate Action Partnership website.
Yeah.
Now I know, Andy, did you have a chance to have a look at it?
Yes, yes, I will.
This is really to encourage members to have a look at the website and just kind of review what else could be done to energise it, to add things to it. And there's a lot of material on it, and it was all originally set up to reflect the sort of different elements of the action plan, so the kind of business economy, land use, environment,
Waste recycling,
lots of different things.
energy,
Read out the thing. But
I'm
it's
not reading
how.
it, I know it.
But it's sort of about, the websites quickly become stale, to be honest, so it's working out how best to make it more user friendly and relevant. And I suppose, what would be really helpful, because you don't have completely fresh eyes to it, is if you were happy to have a look at it and give some feedback to Michelle.
To Michelle, I was
So
just going to
welcome
ask
to do
who
the
would
same.
I do that to?
Yeah, if you sent it to Michelle.
So, see, my email address is cec@homevalleyparishcouncil.com.
Is it on here somewhere?
Possibly not.
Jen will be able to
Jen,
share it with you.
Yeah. So I'll just make a note.
Because I think the problem is when you're involved in developing a website, you quickly become blind to the thing because you know where stuff is. And I think because, again, thinking ahead to this communication that's going to go out and result in the database, it's really important that when people then go, oh, I'll have a quick look and see what's on it, that they don't then sort of lose interest
Yeah.
or not be able to find things.
Yeah.
So it's really welcome sort of fresh eyes looking at it, and then Andy was having a look as well. So hopefully, if all that feedback can be given to Michelle, then
Yeah.
bits can be reviewed.
And to be honest, the site was developed to be the brochure online. It was never thought of as something that we've evolved it into something bigger than it is, and everything's not in the right place because of that. As that's what happens. So actually, I can't look at it because I've been doing it for too long to sort of say, well, actually, if I need to find it, I know where to go.
Yeah.
So it's just a case of getting somebody to come along and say, right, actually, this is how I want to have the headings and so on. So.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
So if you're happy to do that,
Yeah.
that'd be brilliant. Because the other thing, because I think the most recent change that we made to it, which is a big improvement, is it connects into our Facebook. It's got our Facebook feed, isn't it? So that then, because I know Michelle and Sian, who's the Home Valley Climate Action Partnership paid person, paid by them, not by us. They both work together to put content on it. So that's the other thing. That if you come across content that you think is relevant, be it about green grants you come across, be it about interesting articles you've seen somewhere, do share them with Michelle and she can put them on there.
Right.
But we're kind of conscious that it's one of those Facebook sites which people who are already interested in that will look at it. So it's not really converting anyone
We do
new
send it
business
onto
centre.
the business community page if they approve it. Home Firth Business Community page and Home Firth Community Group, and the local ones like Scholes and Woolville, we'll share it onto them as well.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like, does anyone look at it? I can see how many people have viewed this stuff, and it's very low numbers, because they don't know we exist for starters.
Yeah.
They're not following us. So hopefully, as I said, we'll get this database. We can just like go out and say, right, if you're interested, this is there and that.
Yeah.
But to Rachel's point, we really shouldn't contact them until the website's right, because you get one chance, and if they don't like it, they won't come back again. They won't look. So yeah. So if you could do that, that'd be great.
Definitely, I'll do that. I'll do that this week.
Thank
and
you.
send you an email.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to add anything else on the website?
I think your point about making it relevant, it's a bit of a moving feast, isn't it?
Yeah.
And at the moment, my thoughts are that people will be desperate to get information on how do we save energy. And it talks really, if you go onto that site, I thought it was
The first thing.
smacking you around the head.
Yeah.
This is how you save energy. And I always think case studies are good. I know you've got one to one there, okay. But we could probably do some little case studies. They don't have to be big expensive solar panel installations.
That was another point I was going to say. The ones I've got,
It's
it's just
things
really
like, you know, throw away your kettle and have an instant heater, or it doesn't
That's
cost you very
expensive.
much. No, they really don't. They don't cost a lot. And there are some things that don't cost anything. So there's a whole variety of things that will save energy.
They're all in the booklet, and that's what I pulled out of some.
I'm not saying that they're not, Michelle.
No, what I'm
just
saying,
that
what I'm trying to say is
that's
for
the
the
thing that
event
needs to stand out for them at the
on
moment.
the website, for the events, I took the booklet apart and pulled out the things like abnormal showers, less baths, all that kind of stuff. So yes, we could put that up on the front page at the top easily. That's very easy.
But this may change in a couple of months' time, and it may be something else that.
I think it's also,
the head
yeah, because I think we talked about, because you were, as you say, you were taking some bite-sized chunks out of the energy booklet. I guess it's thinking about, again, using our Facebook feed as well as to whether there's an opportunity to, because I can't remember whether you said you were going to do this one again or not, I imagine, that there'd be, you know, almost like a tip of the week kind of thing.
Not on the Facebook page, I haven't really done that. I've just been doing whatever is being spoken about generally
Yeah.
in the world and putting the energy saving tips up and stuff like that. But yeah.
I just kind of checked in, even from a personal perspective, this weekend we bought some rolls of draft excluder and went around all our windows again to make sure they were.
Yes.
Is there an Instagram page as well?
To be fair, it's, I don't know how much Instagram stuff you've done, because you can't just use any old photographs, so then you have to resize everything to use it on Instagram, and it just becomes a bit of a pain. But we do have an Instagram page.
So I guess I'd just say for the item on the website, I think as you come across things, as you look at things, just feed them all into Michelle, and she can make those, you know, those changes, or, you know, try things out and see what, you know, see what the interest level is, or if you're aware of, you think, well, wouldn't it be useful if we
Yeah.
had that, or, I think that would be really helpful. Okay, because the intention is really that that website is the source of all local information about action being taken to address climate
Right now,
emergency.
it's not, it is that, it's all there, but it doesn't show it very clearly at all.
So that's kind of the aim. Again, to avoid having multiple websites so that people weren't looking up different groups, they could just Google, you know, what I do in that environment.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next item is a report on other initiatives led by members of the committee. So it's all updates from the committee. The first one was disposal of trade waste, which was something
Hard to do, yes. I've got nothing to report because I've had no time to further that. But the intention is to order some bins to encourage recycling in our office and indeed in this exhibition room as well. So yeah, apologies, but I've not managed to further that.
So I think this stemmed originally from discussion around some trade waste bins in the town, but also in buildings that we. So we, as a parish council, we own the civic. We don't run it, but we own the building. So we rent out the office that we've got there and this room. and obviously we want to make sure we've got to lead by example, so we ought to be sorting our waste. And I think originally, the clerk and the deputy clerk was sort of doing their best, but didn't necessarily have the just need separate bins, just practical things, but actually we're having to take the stuff home.
Yeah.
But doesn't the Civic now have a...
The Civic now does have proper paper recycling. Yeah.
Because I think there was a sense, and you can perhaps comment on this as a business owner in Home Firth, whether there is that provision for businesses to be able to segregate their waste or not.
We have to get our own trade waste bins to do that. Where we're positioned, we struggle with the fact that some domestic waste gets put in the trade waste and things like that, and they don't put it in the recycling bin, and it all gets mixed up. So it's difficult when you've got, because we're surrounded by so many domestic properties where we are, we do struggle with that. So I tend to take all the recycling home, as does my colleague Jackie. We just do that. We're so passionate about it, so we just want to make sure we recycle what we can.
It's what the fair trade shop does.
Is it?
I mean, also because it costs a fortune, doesn't it?
Yes.
The proper bins.
Yes, it does.
So they tend to-
And we've had trouble with them not being emptied and rats and all sorts of things.
Okay.
So, we try and do a lot of it ourselves.
It's frustrating.
Mm.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. That's helpful insight.
We're in a funny position, but as I can see why the fair trade is similar, because they've also got a lot of domestic properties around them.
The back.
Yeah.
It's difficult because it's one of those things where sort of, households are given very, lots of options. Well, a growing number of options actually now from companies as to how to recycle things, and then it seems unfortunate if businesses aren't given that support as well. Okay, fabulous. Well, so we will just, hopefully next time there'll be some bins. So there'll be some bins, make it easier for you to recycle. Right, next one with any community engagement or attendance at festivals, etc. Michelle, I know there was an event at the Home Firth Tech last week.
Yes, it was poorly attended again, and it was all the same old people
The
that
same
would come
faces.
along. And it was run by, so it was the Great Good Green Week last week, which is a national thing that's been established. So the very first time we got involved, we did our own event on Co-op car park on a Saturday, and we closed down the side bit of the car park, and we did have people coming, but generally again they were people that were already involved, and then bless her, Sean did try and rope people in, but it was Saturday and going shopping, they weren't interested. So that's why we made the decision to go on to other festivals. So last week was Fair and Funky. Fair and Funky really is aimed at children. It was on a Wednesday from 10 till 3. Children were at school. And so it wasn't very well attended. However, for me it was really good to see what they do and the other things that they can do and stuff, and think about what we can do with them. But yeah, it was a really good networking opportunity, because the lady from the Co-op, newly appointed pioneer person, she came to talk to us, and so that was really good, because we've now got a connection, and she told us about a grant that's available for fridges to put vegetables in, that like if you've got excess apples and everything, so it's looking for a location in the Home Valley to put that fridge that people can just go and help themselves out the fridge so it doesn't perish. And the Co-op is supporting that. And we, I don't know if you know, you've got Hot Edibles, which is next door to Lindley and Simpson and Block between there.
Yes.
And they grow all the veg there, and it gets put out. But the idea is that, well, if you've got a fridge, then it can last a bit longer. Not that it really stays that long. So so that was really useful. And then we didn't end up doing anything for the Food and Drink Festival, because the council now owns the telephone box opposite the toilets. So, by the way, that's another form of communication we haven't mentioned, that we're going to be putting stuff in there. So hopefully, if it's not vandalised, she said, trying to be positive, that there'll be information in there that people can pick up, and we've got a lot of QR codes, for instance, they can go to the website and stuff and things. So we were going to do that for the Food and Drink Festival, but it wasn't finished in time.
That would be really good, wouldn't
It
it?
is finished now.
So, and it's not going to just be for the climate, it's going to be for it's going to be a community telephone. But that's one of them. And that's one of the things that we've really identified is if you do it along with other people and it's not just going, right, you've got to save the planet to everybody, you get more in people buy into it more.
Engage it.
Yeah, thank you, yeah. It's part of something else I do. So for instance, no, don't use that. Yeah.
So I think there's an aspiration really that, and there's lots of festivals, particularly in Home Firth, but obviously there are events in Homley as well, where there's an opportunity to kind of raise awareness of things that can be done. But obviously lots of festivals are doing certain things off their own back. So there's, you know, the Food and Drink Festival and Folk Festival have those reusable cups, which is something which Parish Council goes some money towards that. There's also one of the things this committee pushed forward was supporting the cargo bike. That's, the e-fix cargo bike. So trying to get that off the ground, and I know that's been attending various festivals.
They were at the February Funky thing, and they were at the Food and Drink Festival, and we actually had a stall at the Food and Drink Festival as well. There was an area. Actually, that would work really well. Not food and drink, folk festival. But I guess that's almost like minded people, some of them. Folk festival.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that was really good because it did some, So
I think it feels a bit like, particularly after COVID, it's been a bit of a triple effect of trying to increase
Well, it's
awareness
the
of
first
actually
year
there are
those
things
festivals
happening.
have really started happening again,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. And one of the things, also things like the Jubilee planting seeds projects, as part of that we did an assembly to all children, and that raised awareness of things like the fact there's a water bottle filler on the side of the public toilets, which loads of kids didn't know, and I now know the queues are much longer for it than they were before, because my children tell me about it. And it's sort of all that sort of gradual effect of people realising what's going on, and things like the cargo bike helped deliver quite a lot of the seeds. And again, we took it into assemblies where we could, and I know from children who then caught me on the street, like, oh, the woman who had the, lady, I'd say, who was near that bike.
Yeah.
So, these things all just gradually raise awareness. And I think what it's, it's the next item, I was going to mention it, something else. So are there any other updates that anyone needs to give? I don't think probably not. So that fits in.
Oh, sorry, I just want to say, on the festivals thing as well, for instance, on the Food and Drink, they promoted the fact that there was a water refill. So that, to me, is the next step. It's just like they know, so they're promoting it for us on our behalf about things that people can do to be green at festivals if they're green as well. So that's really positive as well.
And the thing is, because you're now going into where children are,
Yes.
they just grow up with that as, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want.
And we hope they go home and say, Mom, don't fill the kettle up so much.
They
and
will
stuff
do.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they will
Yeah.
do.
So I think that's what we found quite encouraging from the assemblies as well, that there was generally quite a lot of enthusiasm and feedback, even from the Year 8 students. There were one or two at the end of both the Homley and Home Firth ones who came and said, that was really good.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they all did, I mean, obviously they were sitting there looking
Yeah.
deadpan, but the fact that some actually came and spoke about it afterwards, I think was really, really promising. Okay, next item then, seeking input and views from the local community. So this is sort of general discussion about how better to engage with the community, but I'll just raise one of the things we were going to do for this meeting, we did do, but haven't been able to support us with it because of the time frame, was I've gone to Homley and Home Firth High Schools to say, actually we'd like to hear some views from your students, probably year 10, 11 students, about what they would like to see this committee doing, what they think that Parish Council could support to help address the climate emergency. What ideas do they have that they think we could support, be it with funding or be it with just promotion? And Home Firth High have come back and said yes, they'd be happy to do it, but because it's only just been staff term, they haven't had time to. They know exactly the group of people who they would approach, but those people aren't in the roles yet because they're like school councils. So they've said we'd happily come and talk to you in the new year. And Homley High School, to be fair, I haven't chased them up again to sort of say, can we do it in the new year instead? But I think they're in the same thing, that right at the beginning of term, not the best time to be approaching schools to ask them to come and speak to us. But I think even if we just get one school, but hopefully we get both, that's a good opportunity to just get the voice of some 15-year-olds who I'm sure want to wish to come and speak to us will have some strong views as to things that they think locally could make a difference.
Yeah, that's really good.
Okay, so, well, Darryl, I don't know whether you want to, because you were commenting earlier about us needing to engage better with local communities, so I don't know if you want to comment about how we could better do that.
No, not at this time. I think it needs a deep discussion. I mean, a database is a good idea. It's just, is it ours to fund? That's the only point there. There needs to be more members so we can get more involved. Therefore, maybe it's looking at where we should be targeting. When we first started, we had these 8 targets, and it's like, well, are we still looking at the 8 targets or areas that we have? And if it is that case, then we need to go into the community and find champions for each of these who want to get involved in such things. And then find the communication methods that is appropriate for the thing we're trying to do.
Okay.
So this time,
Yeah.
I don't think we're ready for a let's do this, let's do that. It's more of a fundamental where are we going and then how do we get there? What's our goal? So as I sit here, I have no idea from the original goals that we set how close we are to meeting them. This carbon neutral by 2030, is that really what we should be doing? Or should we be more looking at maybe knowing, well, yes, that's a nice thing to aim at, but it's not our emergency thing. Let's help people get better transport, better houses, warmer homes, cheaper electricity. And if,
Those are all lovely, Darryl, but they're not things the parish council in itself has control over.
yeah, but that is what the committee was set up for. They're the things that sit in the end. This is what the climate emergency committee is trying to do, isn't it? That's why we're.
But it's trying to work with the community to move towards net zero, yeah.
But the targets are listed on the climate emergency action plan as those 8 things that we are going to get involved with. So it's how far along those are. So my very point is, well, if we're not going to do that, what are our new goals? What should we be doing?
Okay. Well, I
Because
suppose
it sits here on the side. These are the 8 things we are going to do. We are going to encourage better homes. We are going to encourage, etc., etc.
Yeah,
We are doing those though, aren't we? Because we work with Eco Homes and they're trying to get the houses.
But we're not well, that's...
The whole idea of this committee was not to actually necessarily
To
do the
engage
actions,
with
it was
others.
to engage with others that were
But
doing it.
we obviously don't have enough people sitting around here. We're obviously not engaging. We're almost playing at it. There were so many people sitting here in our first meeting, you couldn't get in the door. So at that time, there was a real public commitment. But there just isn't. As you said, where people don't know the website's there, but there are no community champions
No,
anymore.
because the people that, as I said, some of them it was
So if they move away, because we're now sitting here in October now, so it's not like yesterday they disappeared.
well, they announced that they were stepping down from the committee before
Okay,
this
so the
meeting.
question was how do we communicate? My answer
So-
is, I think we need to know where we're going before we communicate where we're going. Are we going to the right place? Is the committee doing what it set out to do? Or is it no, we need to slightly change and engage more in different areas? There are 8 targets on the website.
There were 8 actions that were to be done, and when I
8
came,
actions which are
when I
broken
came-
down into
when- yes.
individual bits, yeah? So
When
there's
I
lots
came-
of stuff to do.
yeah, but it's not.
when I came on board, I was asked.
It is agriculture, it's food production, it's housing, infrastructure, economic and business, waste, they're all really lovely things, split into 6, 7, 8 different things.
When I came on
Well,
board, I was
seems to
asked
be-
to action and take things forward that were listed in there. So under the heading, for instance, of
So,
waste and recycling, it was I worked with the people that championed it.
so,
and the
they
repair
stop,
cafe was-
so they stopped, or are we still
Yes,
going?
but this only just
So if
happened.
the answer is yes, is it a case now we need to revisit, because we don't seem to be, it doesn't seem to be an emergency, we planting trees, waiting for 30 years until they start helping the environment, maybe isn't quite where we should be going. Or maybe we should do more lobbying, maybe we should send people to places to give the Paris Climate Emergency Commission message, or find out what others are doing and put someone there to say, look, we think this in our area. Maybe we should be more of a lobbying group to get others involved, to say, no, home Valley wants to do this.
I'd be very interested in what you two do in your role as fighting climate. If you've got any suggestions as well that you could contribute.
Say about what Citizens Climate Survey focuses on, it initially focuses on a particular policy though. So it works to promote a policy of climate income to MPs. And the idea of climate income is to put a price on carbon, and they'll take the revenue from that, the price that's charged by emitters, as they're giving it to the government, you distribute it equally to citizens. So basically it's a kind of neutral cost for government. It discourages emissions, but it then returns those funds to citizens, but by distributing them equally, what happens is that people at the on the lowest income bands receive the most, because typically they will have the lowest emissions, so they kind of become net beneficiaries of that. The people in the highest income bands tend to have the highest emissions, so they end up paying kind of a net cost from the increased costs. But the vast majority of people, I think it was around 60% of people, actually benefit from it. So it becomes a way of combating fuel poverty. So it's a specific policy that's aimed at both reducing emissions, ensuring a fair transition that supports people through fuel poverty as well. And that's combined with carbon border adjustment to prevent leakage, i.e. people undercutting UK businesses that have low emissions, or people sending their industries offshore in order to avoid the costs. So it focuses specifically on that.
One
as
simple policy.
That could have a large impact. It's been shown in various studies and in work that's happened in Canada, it's already implemented it, that it can have a big effect. So
Okay.
that's very
So
specific.
we lobby MPs, basically.
Yeah.
So we write to MPs and phone MPs. So it's more direct.
Yeah,
like
this
you
type
say.
of activity.
Yeah.
This is, I think the distinction is that obviously you're trying to influence national government policy, which is great, because obviously to an extent, that's where change needs to happen at the regulatory level. But in terms of the sphere of influence that the Home Valley Parish Council has, it is only over the Home Valley. And obviously a lot of things, actually, our main influence is communicating and sharing information and educating people through that. And we have some funds, but limited funds, to spend on grants towards things that we want to see. So the challenge, I think, obviously that we've sort of been wrestling with, is the fact that we haven't got, we can make policies if we like, but they won't mean anything because we don't control the rules that govern how businesses do things in the valley or that sort of thing. All we can do is help, inspire and encourage. And I think, looking at the action plan, there obviously are the 8 headings, but I would say that for most of them, we have a lot of them. They're all about working with partners in the end, and things like there's energy action, for example. With that's an example of something. I'm not saying we shouldn't refresh whether there's new actions that we need to do to support them, but obviously looking at how we support people in terms of using less energy. That's been around the energy saving information, and clearly there's the issue about how we then share that and communicate it effectively. We paid for obviously the energy audits of this building and of Holman Library, so that led to those buildings being able to then secure funding both from the parish council and indeed from other funding sources to be able to implement lots of the changes. So be it putting in different light bulbs, putting in heating systems, putting in insulation, all that sort of thing. So a lot of these actions, they're not actions for the committee itself, for the parish council funds just to do. They're about, these are where we're trying to get to, and these are the things that we're trying to do to support them along the way.
I really agree with what Darryl's saying, that we really need to create some new energy, because I don't know whether you were at the initial meeting when this room was absolutely packed, and the energy that it created was, honestly, there was some real excitement that things were going to change. And I was thinking maybe if we targeted, say, different age groups, so the really youngest age groups from literally maybe 5-year-olds to 11-year-olds, and then another group of a cohort of 10 to 15, 11-year-olds to 16-year-olds, going all the way up to literally 80 to 100-year-olds going, and we maybe target 10 people from each throughout the Home Valley of each age group who are interested in these climate issues, so that we could actually generate some proper energy and enthusiasm.
Isn't that why you need the database though?
I
As
was
a
going to say, how are you
standard.
going to identify these?
Well, I think I'm very interested in Extinction Rebellion, and they're very interested in a citizens' assembly, because we really need to move to a bigger, more exciting level of being able to make a difference. I really respect all that you've done so far. This is the initial stages, but we've got to have the target of 2030, and we need to regenerate some more energy.
Do you think it's just because, do you think it's our problem, or do you think this is a nationwide problem of apathy? Because everybody's got their own stuff to deal with at the moment. So how do you think we in the Home Valley are going to overcome something that is national, not just about the Home Valley?
Yeah, okay.
I think we have to realise we're a small group with volunteers. There's a limit to what we as a group are going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing we can do is enable others, so generate that enthusiasm amongst others. Lead by some example.
Yeah.
So I think the example that Edsel talked about the energy audits, if we can encourage others to do the same sort of thing, well, we've done it, these are the results, why don't you consider doing it? That sort of approach. We're never going to be able to do it ourselves.
There are 27,000 citizens in the Home Valley, so we need to somehow reach some of those cohorts
I think things have changed, haven't they? During lockdown, there was a lot of enthusiasm for a lot of things, and I'm involved in other volunteering, and we're struggling now because people have gone back to their previous lives, to working.
They're getting to travel again. They're making up for lost
We have
time.
to realise that we are where we are.
Okay,
Perspective as a sort of someone coming in and just observing, because we've dealt with different groups. Within the CCL group, we coordinate the Ocean Hunt group, we invite people into that. Lots of people sign up, some come to the first meeting. 2 or 3 will stick and do things. I found the same with the Climate Action Network in the company that I work in. There are hundreds of people who joined it. If I go to a meeting, there's maybe 6 or 7. That's not untypical. I think that is human nature. Something you said, I think, challenged with what I hear, what this committee does is enablers and facilitators, because there are a lot of things that can already be done. There are grants, there are actions that can happen. Most people, they're not necessarily even that they're not aware of them, they're not thinking about them. They need the prod of somebody to put that information out there. So, hey, have you thought about this? And have you seen what so-and-so's doing? And that prompts and inspires people to think, oh, we could do that. That seems to be both very local, which feels like it's the right focus for this group, but also that facilitation, enablement, going out there. I like the idea of using the festivals. There's so many things happening, rather than being something specifically. If you're interested in climate, come and do this. What we tend to find in other organisations is you're doing this, you know that here's a climate angle on that.
All those things that are drivers out there, aren't there, that we perhaps need to be quicker at latching on to. And I have to say, and it's an awful thing to say in a lot of ways, but it tends to be when it's sitting in your pocket.
Yeah, that's what I said from the day that I came on
Fuel prices go up, everyone everyone's interested in learning
Yeah,
how to
nice,
save fuel. Electricity prices go up, we all want to save electric. And this is where I think we can step in and help people and say, these are the
Children
things
are
you can
great
think about.
prodders.
That's exactly it, yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head there, because that's what I said, and when I first started out with this committee, it was like, well, we shouldn't be going in on that angle, and I'm a my job is marketing and communications, and it's just like, the nice idea is that you can tell people this is going to save the planet, and they go, oh yeah, but the truth matter is, it's got to be about the money, then you can talk to them about the other side of it, and so that's one of the things, but with all of this, we've got no way of getting in touch with these people. So that's that is where it's falling down. It's all there. We've got the information to give them for them to enable, but we can't give it them.
Yeah.
We've got it. And it is only small, and it's not the big, exciting, let's all scream and shout in anger thing. It's like we're trying to do stuff that we can do that will make a change. If we change, we worked out that like there's 27,000 people in Valley. You're not going to get all 27,000 people on board. If you get 10,000 to put a less in the kettle, but it's just like, yeah.
I mean, I am Green Party, so we get small amounts of people don't want to join the committee, but they're very enthusiastic, they will come and turn up. So we do get, you can get 50, 60 people to an event, even now, pandemic or whatever.
But
what I'm feeling is, maybe we need to change the message rather than the actions that we're doing. Carbon reduction to me, as a Green Party person, is dull.
Oh gosh, it is. That's what I said,
really
and that's what I said as well. I wanted to be able to
so
give it
in my
an
head,
image.
it's like, it's on the website, great, but can we park it and move into what we're talking about, which is more facilitators, helpers, go do this. So it would be, so just jotting through things now, so it's help create, we as a committee, help create warm, resilient buildings, help grow green environments, or help transform transport and getting around the local area. And it's maybe work with land and nature to protect us from flooding and such like, show people how to reduce or improve the money in their pocket and such like. So these messages, where we still do what we're doing, may pull in more interest, I say. But I mean, I'm more interested as a green person. There's not so much in carbon reduction because we're just never going to get there. You're just never going to get there. So, but I very much want pesticides to not be used in our area, and I will go and lobby. And I won't go and sellotape or glue my head to a road, but I will go and talk to people about it, or go to a meeting and such like. So it's fine. It is, as we're saying, facilitating. I do agree with the database. It's facilitating, what can be done, and then challenging it. Do you know this meeting's on? Do you know this is happening? And we're doing some really nice things. I just think the word emergency has disappeared. So should we drop it anyway and just be a climate something committee, or and then we are the environmental part of, or the climate part of the Home Valley Parish Council, all for the benefit of the community, or is it no, we're going to reduce zero carbon by 2030, which we're not going to do, and people sit in dinner parties and say you're not going to do that.
What is it that you think the difference that makes it an emergency versus not emergency?
Urgency, we're doing this, so communication, we're doing this is happening. Something that is achievable, zero carbon by 2030 is not achievable.
Yeah, but it's an aspiration. That's the
Yeah, it's not, yeah, but
It's a BHAG.
I don't think people buy into it.
A BHAG. A big, hairy, audacious goal.
Is part of the database also going to incorporate people that are in the Green Party, for example?
It's everybody.
It's everybody. So we went
Because you
for
can target
community groups.
most like-minded people, can't you?
Yeah.
I think the challenge is though, really,
To get
people who are already interested in green issues,
will come
are
in.
already interested in green issues.
Yeah.
We can invite them, we can have a big, I mean, when this first started, the climate emergency, there was a big workshop which had, 50, 60 people. They all came along, all shared their ideas.
Yeah.
But in reality, lots of those ideas could only be achieved, best of all in the world, the parish council in itself couldn't achieve possibly. But a lot of them spun out into like the repair cafe and tech, eco homes, residential development. All those sort of groups spun out from that, which was great. And there is perhaps a need to kind of raise awareness again to say, let's keep promoting those things, but saying actually, what else do people want to do and really make a change? But I think certainly my take on it has been more around we don't need to talk to all those people who frankly already recognise there is an issue. It's all those other people who are just busy getting on with their lives and don't realise that if they make a small change to this, that or the other, that actually has a really positive effect. And they're not, as Michelle says, they're not necessarily doing it for the green reason as such, but they're doing it because it's financially sensible, or actually, you know, there'll be lots more people walking and cycling because it's too expensive to run their cars. There'll be more people not turning the heating up, turning the thermostats down because it's more expensive, but they don't necessarily think of themselves as kind of green, you know, eco-champions, but it's recognising.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about the word urgency. If you want to go on the emergency side of things, then you probably need to be targeting people that are already halfway there in their thinking.
It depends what our target is. If it's to reduce carbon by 20, we need to do something now at a big scale.
But we don't have the levers to pull on that.
No, but to your point, and
Well,
this is something I said ages ago,
That shouldn't be
I've done the
target.
carbon literacy project, and what I wanted to get from that is how do I translate carbon literacy into a language people understand? I don't understand what I've saved 1,000 CO2 emissions means to the world and whatever, and contextualise it, and I didn't get that out of it. So, to everybody's point, we need to reframe how we position it. I think what you said about enabling is good, and the thing I haven't got around to doing because I'm trying to find it is things like, if 10,000 of you in the Home Valley do this, it means this, that kind of thing, and then it gives the contextualised. I can't find the facts because I thought I was going to get that on the course and it didn't come out of it. And then I tried to speak to, we had a guy called John Queening on the committee, but he is so clever and he's an engineer and he couldn't talk to me in a language I understood. So I couldn't translate it then. So that's what we're thinking of. But all this comes back to what you've mentioned about if we've got a database, if we can think of things to say, if we can enable, then we can send it to people and then we can get them to spread the word amongst themselves.
I think we need to decide where we're going, what we're doing, what our priorities are.
Well, can I? Yeah.
And if they're the same, then yeah, they're the same. Or if they need to change, well, where do we change them?
Okay, but mindful of the other things we need to talk about, we will kind of revisit this a bit with the item near the end, which is about the future of the committee, because I think lots of this will have feeds into it. So I'm going to skip us on to the next item, which is about our budget and earmark reserves. So this is just to note what our existing budget is. So obviously at the moment it's all been grouped by the sort of action plan headings that we have. So it's community mobilisation, energy, transport, waste, environment, land use, business and economy. And that's sort of what we started with, which is how they ended up like that. So this is just to note how much money we've got left this year, consciously there's a couple of items coming up which may spend some of that money. So is everyone happy just to note what that budget is? Because it's just really relevant for the next item. So the next item is so we've had a couple of referrals from other committees, and this is where grant applications effectively have been taken by other committees. Now this committee itself doesn't award grants in itself, it's because the way it's been set up, which is the way the parish council is sort of maintaining oversight, if you like, all the monies that would be going out to different groups. But it has funding under the titles that we just talked about, and it's been suggested by members on each of those committees that these particular items actually would be ones that may be suitable for the Climate Emergency Committee to put some of their funding towards, given the type of things they involve. So the first one, item 28, the Service Provision Committee, is about putting in a bike repair station and tamper-proof bike rack next home for public toilets, where we previously some bike lockers, which I think it took us about 3.5 years to get rid of those bike lockers, that were generally used by some people who either dented them or used them as a store for their own stuff. Not their own bicycle, but their own stuff. So they were eventually removed because they basically weren't being used for what they were intended for. Darryl, do you have a comment?
Does related to the last that we've just had, does the providing grants come into the subject of what should the committee be doing? Are we going to be a grant giving committee were we set up originally as a grant giving committee, or should we use that money in these pots to do things related to those pots, rather than give money to other people to do something related in those pots as a grant?
Well, we were not set up as a grant-giving body, but these activities coming up are things that fit into the sort of things that we were expecting to facilitate and enable in the valley. That's why they've come to us as a consideration of using our monies to make them
So
happen.
it's not just another committee saying, we don't want to spend our money, give it to the climate emergency committee.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
So service provision doesn't actually have any budget for transport. It does have money that it gives in grants. This isn't a grant application as such. It has come about because Wynne from Home Pride emailed me to say, did you know there are these free bike repair stations that people can get hold of as long as they've got somewhere to install them? And as we'd just had, it sort of coincided time-wise with the removal of the bike lockers. So there is that space by the public loos to put what would be for us a free bike repair station. And given that, I mean, there are some bike racks popping up in Holmfirth. I noticed there's one now outside Oscars, and I know our own councillor, Councillor Bellamy, who is a member of this committee, they've got some bike racks as well. But it just seemed, right, well, if you're going to have a bike repair station, why wouldn't you also invest in looking at a tamper-proof bike lock to go with it? So this isn't a grant application that's been made. This is actually, if anything, me being a bit of an opportunist, councillor Gould, is that I had this email from Wynne. I was already looking with our maintenance guy, John Ford, how that area might be used, because we had wondered about putting a seat there, for example, because we happen to have a couple of seats that have been relocated. And when I took it to service provision, because looking at the standing orders and terms of reference for the committees, they approved matters relating to transport. But they quite rightly pointed out to me, yes, we can approve it, but we couldn't actually fund it. We couldn't, actually make it happen. But why not refer it to climate emergency? Because perhaps they could.
I suppose reminding ourselves that the building that it's on is our building.
Yes.
So we own the public toilet.
Yeah. So that's the sort of history of it.
So the repair station is free.
The repair station is free.
Who's
It would
come
need to
from?
be installed.
As in free, who provides it?
I would have to go and have a look at whatever Wynne's
Free to
email
use,
told me,
obviously.
yes.
Okay.
But the actual station is being provided free.
Okay. Then personally, I'm quite supportive of putting in the bike repair station. I'm less supportive of the design of racks, if it's like in that picture.
They don't have to be like that. So, and I haven't even started looking at potential racks yet.
I think it'd be better having a what they're called, Sheffield stand, that are those like that shape.
Like in
More
the baths.
robust. Well, like on the other side of the bus station car park. They're just like a metal thing that goes like that. Whereas those narrow things, bike wheels vary so much in size that it's difficult to get them in, and they tend to wobble off the wall anyway.
Yeah.
But
There
I
are
welcome
cheaper.
other comments on it.
And incidentally, because I have had some feedback from Councillor Bellamy, I mean, he said that the kind of bike rack they've got at the B&B cost far more than what's been suggested here, up to £500. I think he said it cost something like £1,400 to have it installed.
That price has already been done because the transport committee were looking at bike racks, so Catherine O'Halloran somewhere in documentation how much bike rack would cost, but it got frozen because you had to get permission from Kirklees for the land to do it, so the costings for the Sheffield Steel bike racks are around somewhere. And it is about that, that's why,
Right.
What
Thank
about
you.
£500 or about
No,
400?
I think it was about 1,400. I'll try and see if I can find it whilst we're here. Okay.
That said, you could put the bike repair station in before for putting in bike
Bike
racks, if we
racks,
needed more funding for that. But so there would be costs associated with installing it, wouldn't there? But the bike repair
Yeah.
station is free.
Yes, that's my understanding.
So what are people's thoughts?
No, good idea, yeah. Want to be a bike-friendly town, let's do it.
We're enabling people to do that, aren't we?
And again, it's something, it would be literally around the corner from where the water
Fountain.
fountain is, so it works quite nicely. Okay, so it sounds as if then, you got any points, Andy?
Not directly, it's just a thought, is it something we could do, encourage businesses to put bike racks in? We're not very well served around here for that.
Yeah,
It's tricky because you clearly say.
The reason it,
So you can't put anything virtually anywhere.
the reason it came to a
Oh, right,
grinding,
on their, on
no,
their.
the reason it came to a grinding halt
got
is
sign
that the bike racks are outside their property, and that tends to be on the pavement, which belongs to Kirklees,
Yeah.
and they all, she
No,
spent
no,
ages doing
I
it.
wasn't thinking that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
People that come to us and cycle tend to fix their bikes to the railings that we've got in front, off the pavement,
Yeah.
so they can safely do that, but yeah.
Okay, so are we happy then to approve in principle funding up to £500 for installation of bike repair station and look into the cost of bike racks?
Yeah.
Okay, can we take a vote on that, councillors? So obviously if the, thank you, so that's carried. So obviously it sounds as if it may be a case that the bicycle racks have to follow afterwards.
Yeah.
But that £500 should at least cover the installation of said bike
Yes.
repair station.
Yeah.
And it needs to be done thinking about potential for putting in a bike rack
Yeah.
next to it. But obviously you don't want the bike rack right next to it, so that if people are using the bike rack, you can't get to the bike repair station. So it's a little bit different. Okay, thank you for that. So the next item is about a grant application, well, a couple of grant applications that were considered by Finance and Management Committee. So you've had all the papers about the applications, and the first one is about funding a smoothie bike for Fair and Funky. Now, Fair and Funky, obviously, Michelle's already mentioned as one of the partners we've worked with, and I know that they used their smoothie bike and they used it as our Bright Green Week last year. And it does generate interest. It's a fun thing to do, and whilst I'm not sure there's any particular environmental benefit in making smoothies with a bicycle like that, it's the principle of it's an engagement tool, and I think they do a lot of good work with schools, and it feels as if personally, I think it would be a good thing for the parish council to support, and I think it fits with our kind of communicating that message, which Fair and Funky is all about, well, climate elements, but it's also about fair trade and global economy and all those sort of things, which are all sort of part of the picture. So personally, I would support us using some of our mobilisation funds, which the point of the mobilisation was all about that educating, sharing, raising awareness. That was kind of the first principle of our climate action plan in the first place. So personally, I would propose that we do fund that, but obviously I welcome comments from anyone else? Gentlemen?
Can I give some feedback from Councillor Pony? He thought it was quite expensive fun for the.
Okay.
So I'm just relaying what he said.
I think there are some links, be a little bit tenuous, but nevertheless there are some. And I know we've got to the next two items, but when I look to the next two, I'm thinking less so. You know, we could have be opening ourselves up to all sorts of things here, couldn't we? And the
Okay, well, can we just consider each one in turn?
Yeah, okay.
Because they're from different line items, so we don't have to, agreeing one doesn't mean that we have to agree the next one.
Okay.
That might
Yeah.
be-
I'm sort of sitting on the fence with the first one.
No, I'm a no for those ones.
You're a no, are you? It's
Okay, do I have a second for
How closely does it fit with climate emergency?
This is, again, comes down to what are we doing, what are we funding?
But also, I think there's a recognition that we are, what are we in, October, our civic year starts in May, and we have a budget that runs out at the end of March. So,
And our next meeting is in
We-
March.
So
we need to just think about how we
Using
using our
just for the
money,
sake of spending, why is our next meeting only in March?
because we only have 3 meetings a year,
Right.
or 4 meetings a year, apologies.
Can we not change that?
Well, with the exception of the planning committee, we only have 4 meetings a year of each committee.
4 meetings doesn't represent an emergency, does it?
However, the
let's
issue
not
was
go
that
around
these were the summary
cycle again.
meetings, and I used to have
Action
meetings
meetings.
with other people in their action meetings to do stuff, and then we'd give a report back
That is no longer the case.
temporarily.
Well, it is partly the case, because there have been discussions on it's not far leave the car, and there has been, for example, the Queen's Jubilee project,
So what's
which
the,
with respect has
So
required a
what's-
lot of time by some
so what's the
individuals.
fundamental idea, reasoning behind the committee itself then? Are we rubber stamping things that have already been done? Like the main committee, I sit in the main committee, rely on people who've been to other committees to say this is a really good idea, and I go, oh yeah, sounds like it, but rather than stamp it. Is that what we're doing, or are we creating policy?
We're not creating policy as such, we're enabling things to happen, but obviously
But
activities need to happen in between, don't they?
Just coming back to this
Yeah, let's get a
particular
stick on the
item,
fair
let's stick on this. Are we saying then that they've applied for a grant from another committee? We
Yeah,
don't
from
have
finance and
funds.
management. We've
So-
suggested that this could be funded through
Well,
the
that's
emergency
not a good
committee.
thing to do,
Mm.
far from it. What I am questioning
why can't they fund it?
is it part of the climate emergency remit, or should it be part of another committee's remit?
The argument I would say is it's a means of engaging in an interesting way with people, which is one of the key things we want to do in order to get our message about climate emergency.
Yeah,
You could say that some of the things Fair and Funky do are nothing to do with climate emergency still. You know, it's not. I appreciate they're not, it's not so that they can support an event that's about climate emergency, but I am conscious we have used them and worked with them on things like the Bright Green Week. But I don't really want to have, we don't need to have a 15-minute discussion
I
about it.
think
I think
it's
we should move to a
moved
vote.
So I think it's a bit of a tenuous link to the climate emergency.
Well, we put it back to the finance committee, that's them to fund it.
okay.
Okay. All right, it's not supported then.
No.
Okay, move on to the next one then. This one is about Hepworth United Football Club, who have, they want to fund solar batteries to support the solar panels that they've installed on their football club, allowing them to basically capture the excess solar power and therefore reduce their dependence on bottled gas. So again, this was referred to us from the Finance Management Committee on the basis that so we've been doing work to look at energy efficiency measures and renewable energy elements, because they're all part of the picture of reducing reliance on fossil fuels. And the Finance Committee were keen, we're keen to support it, but recognise that actually the funds within, and well, the reality is the funds within the Finance and Management Committee for community assets are limited, and because this was something that really felt very directly related to the climate emergency in terms of people giving a good example of the community facility, which the football club is, actually making that difference, and they'd sought funding from lots of different sources to pay for those solar panels, that this committee may be minded to use some of its money set aside for energy efficiency to support them.
So have they got batteries already?
No,
Are these
they've got
extra
solar
batteries?
panels, but they're not able to store their energy.
So if they overproduce, they haven't got any way of storing it to be used to make it more efficient, so it just gets wasted without the battery. Is that what it is?
It says two things, doesn't it? One to provide provision, also equipment to allow the excess to be stored, I'm assuming sums to,
Well, all the papers are in the pack, aren't they?
yeah.
With all the detail.
Is also to provide them hot to for their hot water as well.
Seems a very positive thing to do.
I mean, personally, I think it's a really positive investment by them, and I think giving them some money towards making that a reality of not only doing the solar panels, but actually then capturing the solar energy, I think is really positive, and I think it'd be a great opportunity for us to highlight.
And do they then publicise the fact that you've helped them achieve that goal?
Yes.
A good case.
But also, I think what we need to start looking at is, can we just put, and it's a real simple thing, but supported by
Well, this is something
a badge or
we
something.
talked about,
Yes,
because
yeah.
the Finance Management Committee, because I sit on that as well.
They have a green plaque.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we've got the branding, we could put, you know.
I do think,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very worthy thing to do. It's something I've done myself, so I wholeheartedly support it. It's very positive in that sense. Again, I just question why, are we just becoming another fund for the finance
Well,
committee because we've run out of money there?
Yeah, but I
Shouldn't
think
it
that
come from there?
I think there's the issue with the whole of parish council. I think we can get a bit too fixated on each committee. As it's been set up at the moment, the parish council, effectively, the fund giving, the grant giving, is all done through finance and management. 18 months ago, that wasn't the case. There was a community assets committee and there was a finance management committee, and they gave different grants. And we could have had a climate emergency committee giving different grants, but it all got complicated. So it was all brought back into finance management. But that's a wider kind of structural issue of parish council is the appropriate way to award funds. But it was felt that the climate emergency committee, well, in fact, the parish council didn't want the climate emergency to be able to distribute funds on its own bat, but it did allow us to set a budget which included monies with which we could work with partners to make things happen. So we've had this very convoluted way that when we've ended up in the past, we've given grants, well, we haven't given grants because we're not able to, but we've been able to work with partners on initiatives like the land use surveys that we did, for example, but we've ended up having to ask finance and management to approve using some of our budget. So it's all partly because of the weird workings of the parish council, but as it stands, we have £10,000 within our budget towards energy efficiency, renewable energy works. At the moment, we have no plan to spend that because there aren't things that we've already given £10,000 to the Civic, and we've given £10,000 to Honley Library to implement energy efficiency measures. But here we have an organisation, a community organisation, so it's different, which has approached the parish council and asked for some money towards this, and finance and management said, well, wouldn't this fit in what the climate emergency committee is trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why would we do it?
Can I just add
Yeah.
From we were talking about when meetings were scheduled. The Finance and Management Committee meet once every 2 months, alternately to the full council meetings, which means the Finance and Management Committee have many more opportunities to, sort of decide where their money is going. You as a committee have just got next March at the moment, and then this money's gone. And from a governance point of view, the precept that all this money is coming from is this year's precept from the public, and you have got a duty to make sure it is spent in this year.
Yes. So I think it's a really good idea, but maybe we should, again, the word refocus and say, let's open ourselves up to the community to say, if you've got an environmental grant which you need doing now, which will help us towards the community, we are the people to come to.
Yeah, we
Okay,
are
well, that's
doing that,
Yeah.
and the HV cap, that's what they're doing as well, and then they come to us and ask us about it, so it's kind of there, but it comes back to the fact of how do we tell people.
Okay, we need, I'm really conscious of time, because we're
Yeah.
at 5 to 9, so
Yeah.
we need to, so can we take a vote, please? I propose that we award £5,000 from the budget line 4810 energy that sits within our committee to give to Epworth United Football Club to support them in this project. So does anyone want to second that? Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a view, Andy? Right, you can just say no, we'll move on, because it's been carried in.
I'll say no.
Okay, and then the next one is very similar, to be honest. This is one where Waldale Community Centre, finance management. We have the gentleman who's been involved in looking after the centre since 1978. Came to talk to us about all the initiatives they've done more recently. It was subject to an asset transfer from Kirk Lees, who used to pay for it historically. And I think the asset transfer was in about 2017 or something like that, he said. And effectively, they, as a community group, need to look at replacing the boilers because they're woefully inefficient and they've reached the end of their lives and they're looking to get the most efficient boilers that they can, which, from memory, I may be wrong, total cost was quite significant, isn't it?
Well, this is
55,000 or something like that. Huge amount of money.
This is the absolute opposite of the Hepworth one because it's obviously gas-fired boiler, which
It is, but I think that when they spoke to us, the issue is what alternatives are available for the heating that they require. Because the reality is that other boilers for buildings of that type are not yet affordable.
So theoretically, they've got something more efficient in.
Yeah.
So it's instead of being 30% efficient, it moves to 70, so they burn less gas there.
Yeah, yeah.
Or-
So it does say, yeah.
So it's a
save
bad
energy.
thing, but not as bad as it could do.
but you're still
Yeah.
burning fossil fuels, aren't you? So
You are, but they still need to heat the building.
But the heat pumps that would have that capacity aren't going to be available for a
They'll be
number
too
of
expensive,
years.
so I think.
Yeah,
Even if you stick the boiler on.
yeah.
Well, they've also said if they look, because they looked into heat pumps, but the issue was you'd have to lower the roof because of the
So
way
they
the
could come back to
building.
us for solar energy grant in future.
yeah, with solar, is that a viable alternative solar? I don't know anything about this sort of thing.
You wouldn't heat the whole
Well, it wouldn't
building.
heat
You'd be at once, yeah. It's whether we support fossil fuels or not, isn't it? That's the issue.
Well, you're supporting more energy
More energy
efficiency
efficiency.
as well because they're 30-year-old boilers, aren't they?
Yeah.
So
Because that then opens up to the tech coming and saying our boilers are going, because they are currently looking for boilers.
They are.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is
it opens
sort
it
of-
up to all those organisations to do so, which they can so do. But when the money's gone, the money's gone. And indeed, other places, I know Brockholes has talked to us about wanting a replacement boiler, and they've had exactly the issue that whilst they'd like to get a green boiler, actually the reality is those products are not currently affordable, or they're just, it's not possible.
Quickly turning it on its head, one of the issues to your point of what we're doing now is we had the action plan and it had all these things in, and the whole thing was people were coming to us and saying we want to be green, we want to do this, that and the other. The fact is they don't know that there's any money available from us, and it's kind of like the reverse, because we would have actually put these ideas together and said, come out to people and gone, do you need this, do you want more efficient boiler and everything? But they're now coming to us because it's happening and finding out. So we're actually doing what we're supposed to be doing, but not actually proactive, it's reactive.
Can I, again, conscious of time, I'd like to propose that we do fund £5,000 from our energy budget towards the two new boilers.
We'll lose it. We're not going to spend on anything else and it won't come next year.
Exactly.
Basically, anything we don't spend in our budget ends up going into general reserves.
Yeah, let's spend it.
And then we have to fight to get that amount again next year.
I don't think we can vote, can we?
No,
No, but you
yeah,
can give
it's
it
your opinion.
Yeah.
My point is,
We'd support it.
Alright.
Because you could lose your budgets otherwise.
Yeah.
we're going to lose the thing.
I don't vote either, by the way.
Oh. I keep going to go on. No, I'm not allowed. It's good to.
Do I second this?
Okay, right, so all those in favour of that then?
No.
I assume you are, Darryl, because you...
Yeah, no, I second
Okay,
it.
right, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, right. So we've got the next, it's effectively two substantive items. So the next item is a discussion which we've sort of had in various bits during the meeting. which is about the role of this this committee within the council. Now, what I put together is a paper that you will receive, hopefully see, which was talking about the future of the committee. In front of me, on my side. And this was with a view of making a recommendation to full council. So, what I've done in this discussion paper is to basically muse on some of the things we talked about in terms of the lack of councillors taking part in some of the committees, and also how we can, basically, how as a parish council, since the climate emergency was declared, we have actually, not just in this committee, but through our other committees, picked up on quite a few of the actions that that it was set up to achieve. So there's a bit of a reminder in the first section of the history of the committee, and the terms of reference that say what actually this group is here to do, which is to engage with other groups in the community and other statutory groups to affect the aims of the Climate Emergency Action Plan. And there's the 6 groups, which we've sort of talked a bit about as we've gone on. And to liaise with the Publications and Communications Committee regarding publicity material and publicity events. And obviously we've talked a lot about communications and the challenges within. And then there's a few things that we have delegated. Now this is what is currently in our scheme of delegation. That's what we have responsibility for. So as you can see in that, we are not a grant giving organisation. We are an engaging and communicating committee organisation. And one of the key things that we have delegated responsibility for is managing the workload of the Climate Emergency Action Plan Coordinator, as it was more wordily described. And I've then given a bit of background about what the role was specifically created for, which was to support the committee in developing and coordinating network organisations committed to addressing climate change, as we talked a bit about that tonight, and how that was about enabling progress to be made on the action plan. And just highlighted the role is working specifically on, what has been to date anyway, climate emergency specific activities, doesn't undertake minute taking or any other activities beyond the remit of the climate emergency. Then the next section, I've just given a bit of a canter through some of the key activities that we've done in terms of publicity and motivation, so some of the projects we've touched on already tonight. The energy things, waste, coordination, encouragement, the website, case study database, and then the agriculture work we did when Alison Morgan was leading on that, and we understand it's, I think, still bubbling along, but which is working with a local farm to try and understand the issues of biodiversity and the challenges for improving agricultural land. And I've just highlighted there that whilst we continue to make positive progress, you know, we don't just want to become a talking shop, because that's limited value in terms of actually sharing best practice, etc. But I'm also conscious, with a sort of wider parish council hat on, that there are staffing pressures for the parish council. We currently have a clerk and a deputy clerk, and there's also in reality, a limited number of councillors who are able to commit considerable amount of time and energies to multiple committees. It's like with all organisations, isn't it? So we talked about it, whittles down to the doers. And I think it's important as a result of that we review the committees within the parish council. This committee is one of those. And it's important we also make the most of any paid staff time, because in effect we've got a clerk, deputy clerk, and then Michelle's role as kind of emergency coordinator. And a lot of that role as coordinator was getting the networks built up and things set up, like the database, for example, but once they're effectively up and running and being used, actually, I think there was a sense, and this was discussed at a previous climate emergency committee, there probably isn't the quantity of work that was originally anticipated for the coordinator, because a lot of the sort of getting websites set up, getting databases set up would have already been done, and then it's just more of a supportive function. So just in section 3, I just talk about what the vision is. It's taken straight out of our Climate Emergency Action Plan in terms of Parish Council recognising the state of climate emergency, actions required by all of us to mitigate the impact of climate change on our community, our country and our planet. And I think we have to remind ourselves as well that it's a parish council commitment, it's not just the climate emergency committee doing anything at all. So for example, the planning committee, we have the Home Valley Neighbourhood Development Plan, that's got several key policies in it about energy efficiency, biodiversity, sustainable design, and we are actively highlighting that in all our planning comments that we give to Kirklees about new developments and raising issues about lack of sustainability developments, porous materials for driveways, whatever it might be. And that's been a kind of key element of planning feedback. Similarly, all grant applications Finance and Management Committee receive, all Service Provision C, they do actively ask about sustainability measures, what people are doing to make sure they're thinking about that. And obviously as a result, to some extent, we've seen grants being awarded for efficiency measures. We've had quite a lot of community halls, sports clubs, etc. coming to us with things that they want to improve efficiency-wise. As we've touched on, that often has financial benefits for them, but in the end it's also about reducing our impact on the environment. And obviously I've already mentioned earlier this evening about the energy efficiency improvements here and then on the library, on the cargo bike. So, what my proposal then does is suggest that because we also have a Publications and Communications Committee, which effectively, as it says there, looks after the newsletter, report, website, talks about media spokespersons, we don't really use them very often. I can't remember the last time I had a media spokesperson, but it has a series of activities which are effectively just about communication. It's communication by the parish council to our community. And there's a couple of things that sit within that. There's the Community Champion Awards, which goes to people or groups that have gone kind of above and beyond in helping their community in any way, and approval of the Tidy Trader Scheme, which is about shops and businesses who show pride in their appearance. So they're all about making the community better, and there's the opportunity potentially to create, there could be Community Green Awards. There's no reason we couldn't do that sort of thing, for example. But the reality is, on the parish council, that the Publications and Communications Committee, a bit like this committee, has a very small number of councillors who are able to give the time and commitment to it. And the reality also is that the clerk support team would benefit, I think, from the third member of the staff team, if you like, not being just allocated to the committee, but able to undertake more of the communications elements of the parish council. So what I've suggested here is that the Publications and Communications Committee could merge with this committee, and we could work on an amended terms of reference that then cover the elements of the committee. And I've only given a working title. It could be Communications and Climate Action Committee. And then the coordinator role could be renamed to Communications and Climate Action Officer, and then they'd be looking more at communications, but also any specific projects that came up. And there's a bit more detail than that. So personally, I think the benefit of that is it gives a bit more flexibility for the clerk team, and you'd end up having more of a communications specialist who's obviously doing a lot of stuff on the things we talked about tonight, but also picking up those other things of communication within the council. But also it would allow us to basically be more efficient in terms of what we deliver. And potentially, ultimately, if you have, we're talking about regularity of meetings, there's 3 a year for, is it 3 a year for clubs and groups? 4 a year?
No, it's 4 a year.
4 a year for clubs and groups, and 4 a year for this one.
Yeah, 3 a year for staffing, all the others are 4 a year.
Okay, but potentially there'd be no, so that's 8 meetings, but potentially if this was covering a wider remit, it wouldn't necessarily have to be 4 meetings, it could be 6, for example.
Yeah.
Because bearing in mind, every meeting has obviously this paperwork that sits with it, the minute taking, the administration that goes with each committee is significant, and that's what eats up a lot of time. But potentially by combining 2 committees, you could, personally, I think you could make more efficient use of time and actually have that more regular, it could be a 2 monthly communication.
So if they don't need meetings, why don't we just have one of their meetings?
Sorry, say that
Well, if they've got 4 meetings and you're saying they don't really need 4 meetings, why can't we have a meeting extra that we do need?
That's what she's just said, isn't it?
Well, I'm
No,
saying it
she's
needs to
saying
be
join.
six.
No, she's saying join the committees, whereas if you keep them separate, and if we're saying we want another meeting, they're saying we've got too many, we can just
No,
take
we're not,
another day.
publications and communications, not saying they've got too many.
Okay.
They've got
I thought
four.
you said they were saying they've got too
No,
many.
I'm saying that there's a lot of
Yeah, I do
overlap
follow
in
it.
terms of the communication, because it's all about communication with our
Okay.
community. And I think, personally, that's the main thing that the Climate Emergency Committee needs to focus on, is that engaging with as many people as we can, and I don't think that's just about climate emergency, I think that's a key part of it, but actually a lot of it is wider communication with our residents, telling them what we're doing, how we can help them, and then telling us what they want us to support them in achieving.
So does the communications committee have far too much work that they can't do anything else? Is that what you're saying? They need extra support?
No, I'm
Right,
saying that as a
right.
parish council,
Okay. No,
we have, okay,
if so they're not far too busy, they don't need extra support, you're just saying,
I'm not saying they need extra support, I'm saying as a parish council to operate efficiently, with the public money that we spend on running the parish council, actually, it's more, in my view anyway, it's more efficient for us to review which committees are achieving what, and where there's duplication, which I think there is overlap of skills and support, that means that personally, I think that Publications and Communications Committee could merge with the Climate Emergency Committee and have that support of the third member of staff. And actually, I think everybody would benefit.
Is there no other committee that the Publications Committee could merge with? Because
perhaps the finance committee?
yeah, because I really, really strongly feel that when this was set up, it was set up as, it was like a massive pressure group. The room was filled with 50 odd people, and this was to do with like a major sort of declaration. We've got a climate emergency. I don't want it to be some little add-on with some other bureaucratic sort of publications.
We're diluting
You know, yeah, it's such a dilutedness of something that's so profoundly serious. I'm really quite
surprised.
well, yeah, I really totally won't vote for it.
I think we have to face reality at the moment. You know, there are four of us here tonight.
Yeah, I
Pubs
just-
and Commons are some
3 or
of us.
4, yeah.
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 You know, that's reality, isn't it? And could we achieve more if we got one joint meeting?
Well, no, because for a start, the people on publications may not have any interest in the Climate Emergency Committee, so
Yeah, but they would
But they
choose
can
to
pick
join,
up
that's the point, the merge, any merging would happen for the next civic year, and every year the committees get re-elected and people choose what they want to go forward on.
No, I'm against it.
I'm totally against it.
It's partly about just making use of the resource that you've got though, so.
It's like diluting what the committee is.
Yeah, it's too important a message to put
We
some
can still do anything
cons.
with it. Michelle's going to get, if anything, busier within the committee if we choose our targets and what we want to do. Because she could take on a lobbying role, which is part of our.
I'm not taking on the
But
lobbying. That's not what that was. This was never about.
Lobbying is a more difficult thing,
Yeah.
because
Well,
lobbying in the end
Well,
comes down to
I've used that, I do apologise, I retract it, lobbying is the wrong word. But you do go to meetings, you do put the awareness about it, you do pop down to the tech and see what's going on. You could do a lot more of that, which is a great public thing to do.
yeah, but there's a public thing to do, and there's how are we getting value and benefit from our
Well, that's right. We
community,
need to
the parish
discuss it.
council. And I think that the issue about
Absolutely.
lobbying is important because it's the Climate Emergency Committee can't. I know, but I just want to stress the fact that the Climate Emergency Committee is a committee. Obviously, it can have views as a committee, but the moment we start saying there is a policy of X that we want to promote, then that has to be approved by the parish council in its entirety. That's where,
retracted it, I do apologise.
yeah.
Alternative maybe way of looking at it is that we've already identified that one of the key things is really communication of what's happening here. You talked about what we can do to help people, who you can help, but the question is, how do you reach those people?
Yeah.
It seems as though there's an opportunity to exploit some synergies, because you said again, using other opportunities to actually promote what the committee does in other contexts,
No.
like festivals, etc. Because not as many people are interested in a pure climate emergency related agenda, but translating that into something about, well, what does this mean for you and how can this help in this other context seems to be effective. There's a possibility, there's a benefit.
Well, they could already do that. They already have a publications whole committee which will do that communication.
If they,
Yeah, but the
Let's do
reality
what
is
we
that
can.
committee, Darryl, has three, I think
Well,
it's three members or four members.
I'm also going to lose you. I am not going to. That's not.
No, okay, that's fine, but I'm just
This is
saying
not
that.
why the climate emergency committee's here.
Yeah, I agree.
It isn't. It's
Okay, but what is it?
50% of our councillors here.
I
So
think,
we're
can
not
I
here.
make a suggestion? And I have no idea if I'm overstepping my mark here, but
Yeah.
I want to go home, and at the end of the day, this discussion is actually about what is this group going to do going forward. So I
Okay.
propose that we have another meeting which is about that, and then your proposal will be into that, because you're going to vote on it, and it's already obvious it's going to be voted or split or down because of what Councillor Shears and Councillor Gould are saying, and we can go backwards and forwards.
Yeah. Well,
But I think we do
sorry,
need, I do think we need another meeting specifically to your point about what are we going to do next, because there's these big plans, and I think it was reduced down. There were 60 action points on that plan, and it was reduced down to the essential ones, and they've all happened. All the things on the things that were meant to happen have happened, and there's not been a.
So where are we going next? Is
That's
that,
what I'm saying.
yeah, I agree. I don't want to wait till March.
I've just said that's why we need another meeting.
Well, can we decide on one sooner rather than later?
Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. Rather than you seeing some trees planted.
Can I just make some,
yes, please do.
if I could just make some points. In terms of your standing orders, the way in which voting works is that every member that's a councillor here would have an initial vote. So that's 4 votes. But then the chair would have a casting vote. So that's the standing orders, it's a fact. The second thing I would say is, one of the pressures you're under is the way the council year works. The budget consideration is being given now, really, and it will be at the council meeting in December to decide next year's budget. So in terms of what you want to do with members of staff or appointments or things like that, it's a critical time. Because if the costings and so forth haven't been worked out and agreed for this budget, you sort of lose the opportunity, and potentially you lose that year's worth of work someone might do, if that makes sense. And the only other point I would make is, it is becoming extremely difficult to make sure that any committee meeting is quorate at the moment. I've had to invest an awful amount of time just to make sure that publications and communications, service provision, finance and management even, which is, you know, one of our bigger committees, and then this committee is quorate. So, you were talking about energy and so forth later, earlier on in the meeting. I do think you need to consider about the amount of different committees you have. Now that is indeed something for the council to look at, but it's also for each committee, I think, to consider that position in terms of moving forward. And in terms of talking about having extra meetings, well, then that I think goes hand in hand with having less committees, because there's only so many Monday nights in a year, you know, so you have to think about, well, where can we have them where you're not having 2 meetings in a night or 2 meetings in a week. It's very interesting because, you know, what we've had happen with the national period of mourning has completely disrupted our meeting schedule anyway. So hopefully current attendance isn't typical, but it does show the difficulty in trying to get people to attend outside of the established, which I know, you know, none of that helps you make a decision, but I just wanted to make sure you've got that information.
Yeah.
I think we're going to deal with reality, we're, you know, there's only so much we can do. We can have all the plans in the world for what we'd like to do. Reality says we're not going to be able to do it. We all need to look at our finances. We underspent our budget last year. We've underspent it again this year. We can't spend what we've got because we don't have the manpower to do it.
Is it not more we don't know what to spend it on?
No, we've
No,
all
we
got
don't.
good ideas, but it's putting those into action.
If
And
I,
there just
my,
aren't enough of us, there isn't
Yeah.
enough manpower to do it.
Can I
can I just,
propose?
sorry, I just need to say something here, because the whole point is, why this came up is, the role that I do now, you think I'll be busier, but I won't be busy enough as I have ever been, because unless people give me big projects to do, I haven't got anything to do after the database, unless someone comes and says, right, we're doing this, we're doing that, and I've got something to coordinate. Right now I haven't after this. This is like the biggest thing. So, you know, like, with people coming in and saying they're going to do this, that would, the solar panels, for instance, that would have been me talking to the energy person and then going out and doing it. But it's coming round to us directly, so there's not that role for me there. We don't have a representative for each of the actions. So, from my point of view, I think you're better off utilising me, splitting me between the communication side of it, as that is my industry background, and the climate emergency, because then I'll be using the communication to promote the climate emergency. But right now, there's nothing coming to me to tell me what to coordinate from anywhere.
Right, I would like to propose that the proposal to merge the committees is put to full council for discussion.
Could we not discuss whether pubs and cons could be merged with another committee?
We can do if someone writes a proposal about how it would work in practice. But I actually think the alignment works, given all our discussion about communications works. Anyway, that's my proposal. I don't know if anyone is willing to.
Rather than the proposal we were talking about.
Well, it is
Oh,
that
well,
proposal.
this
Well, it's a
would go-
proposal that this
To the full
is taken
council.
forward to full council for discussion at full council.
Yeah.
But you haven't voted, you haven't put forward the vote that you're going to prefer.
Well, I'm proposing that full council is presented with a
What date?
suggestion.
What date is the meeting?
Full council's next week, isn't it?
The 10th, yes.
Yeah, it's Monday.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that the discussion paper that I put forward for this committee is taken to full council for discussion there. Oh, if no one seconds it, then obviously it won't be, but
What, rather than vote on it tonight?
It's the wrong question to take. We don't want to discuss dialoguing this committee at all. Or have it taken to the council for them to discuss. We don't want to change this committee from it being a climate emergency committee. So
yeah, but it's about what the committee can do and what we achieve, not whether we have
That's
a
a
committee
different-
called the Climate Emergency
that's a
Committee. Or we
different-
could call it the Climate Emergency
that's a
Communications
different-
Committee.
that's
That
a
would
different
be
discussion to what you've just proposed.
As an environmentalist, I don't agree with diluting it down to the pubs and cons. I really am very opposed to it. And so both.
I can't do that as a Green Party member. With my political views and my personal views, we're a climate emergency committee. You know, why go to why throw it to the main committee to say, oh, we'd like to merge with somebody else, please? Because they'll say, oh, they'll either go, oh, yes, savings, because they don't like the climate emergency committee anyway, or it's like, well, yes or no. No, it's,
okay. Well,
they will throw something else back, like why not disband the climate emergency committee because our budget's too high and we have to spend it.
And this is
That's the
first
first thing they'll do. in my
yeah,
view.
but that's an argument we'll have to
No,
have
I
with
don't want to
with
face
the full council anyway when we put forward our budget. So let's say, on the next item we'll be talking about our budget, and if we say we do what we did last year, which is basically replicate the same budget for this year to next year, which then covers the role, the climate emergency role, and an element of funding for the different things, that's fine. We can put that forward. But then we have to defend the budget, because the reality is full council will quite rightly challenge, what are you doing with that budget? Why are we committing money to a member of staff to support that committee at that level? I guess I'm trying to,
And we can't
You know, I'm
spend it.
looking at
The
the-
reality says we
Yeah.
can't spend it. We've not spent it.
Yeah, because we faced a pandemic and it's been a very.
no, but we've been out of that pandemic for a period of time.
Yeah, we've hardly had any meetings, have we? We've-
Yeah, but I think the other thing to bear in mind is our council will end in May and everyone will be up for re-election. So what is the committee structure that we think is the most effective and most efficient means of delivering what the community wants to see? For all those people
Just
who
to
are
add in as well, just because the meetings haven't happened, that's not the reason why the money hasn't been spent.
No.
The money's all been allocated to do things with, and what has been done, the money has been spent. There has been nothing and the money was allocated, and it turned out we didn't need as much as it was allocated to it. And then on top of that, there has been no new things coming through. That was to complete what was put in the original plan. I started this job 2 years ago, coming up in March, and I've completed what was there, but there's nothing new come through. So therefore, there's no more money to be spent if nothing new comes through.
Can I give an example? We've discussed over the last 2 years concepts of allotments. We'd like to increase allotments in the valley. But in practice, that requires people to go and find out what are the permissions you need, where might the land be required, what's the funding needed, what are the planning consequences, regulations, what engagement needs to happen with Kirklees, how the waiting list is, all that work needs to happen. And it's looked to the members of the committee who are interested in pursuing that and have a passion for that to do that legwork. And then Michelle can support them in terms of contacting the right people, etc. But if people don't take those things forward and run with them, then Michelle doesn't have those things to then look
And
to
the money's not
implement.
spent.
Well, I think it's very difficult to find land to actually buy. This is the other issue, the price of the land has gone up. I've approached somebody who's an estate agent to allocate land. It's
Yeah, but that's the issue, I suppose. There's ideas, but in the end, ideas have to turn into tangible things that we want to deliver, or working with other bodies that will deliver them for us. So like all the partnerships we've
I
talked
don't
about.
think that was a criticism in
No, it wasn't. It was just one of those things that's
Yeah, it's like the ideas that we had, bike racks. There was budget allocated to the bike racks. People went off and started investigating it and realised that they got to go to Kirklees. The electric vehicles being an example road that you could use, having the electric vehicle power points on a road. Got down so far, Kirklees needs to sign off. So that's that. I've probably just quoted 10 grand's worth of budget that will never happen because it came up against a stumbling block, because it's beyond our remit.
Yeah.
And I think,
So,
Yeah,
I think
that's
we
the
have to
challenge.
realise,
Yeah.
I mean, we're taking money from the public, aren't we? We're not spending it, we're rolling it over. We don't spend it again, we're rolling it over again. We shouldn't be doing that. If we can't spend what we say we're going to spend, let's realise that we can't do that and tailor our practices to what we can actually do.
Can I make
Yeah.
a suggestion?
Yes.
Finance and management, in their terms of reference, have responsibility for corporate matters, and the management in the committee sort of gives a clue to part of what their name is. Perhaps this particular item could go on to the next finance and management agenda, and an invitation go to climate emergency standing committee members to come along to that committee meeting to discuss the issue there.
Yeah, it's a good solution. When is that next one?
I am just going to take a look at that. I'll put it here. 21st of November,
What day of the week?
Monday.
I'm happy to do that, yeah. Can I propose then that we recommend that finance and management consider that draft paper and extend the invitation to climate emergency members for fuller discussion with it at that meeting to consider how the committee of both services. Well, it is, because finance and management doesn't have a decision on whether to.
And also to say, there's enough time, if anyone wanted to put any counter proposals, put a paper together with a counter proposal, they could do that.
Yeah, with because I think it's important if people have a view of why the climate emergency committee still needs its independence, if you like, and needs to still be and needs clarity of what it's trying to achieve, then it's really helpful if people can then outline that in terms of this is what I think the committee should do, and then there's something, you know, to compare and challenge.
So this will become an intermediate step before going to full council?
Yeah.
So that would be after the next.
Yeah, so we wouldn't be discussing it next week.
When is the next full one after the
It's in December.
It's
the
in
next-
December the
December.
16th, and in fact it would be difficult to, you know, to get it, because I've sent the papers out for full council today. So it would be the December one, and you know there would be an opportunity to discuss any other proposals that are put forward. But you know you do need to make a proposal, and then whatever evidence you want.
And I think then it also aligns with the fact that that's when the finance committee will be looking at the budgets for each committee. I would propose as well that we just replicate the same for the moment. We just replicate this year's budget for next year. But clearly, if others have a view on things that we think we would potentially allocate less money to, or need more money or less money, then that's an opportunity to really bring that forward. So, can I propose that paper is taken to finance management, greater discussion with the invitation extended to members of the Climate Emergency Committee. So can we take a vote on that? Those in favour of that? Okay.
It's just like it's like a turkey bake for Christmas. So it's,
Okay, fair enough. As I say, this is the opportunity to do alternatives. This is just my position. Okay. Well, I'm going to use my casting vote then, so that at least it gets discussed again. It doesn't mean it gets approved, it just means it gets taken for further discussion. So the other item then is about our budget for next year. I would like to propose that we effectively replicate the budget again for 23-24 to be based on the 22-23 budget. Starting point, since we don't seem to have any.
I have the doubts whether we should spend it.
Well, I do too, but as a starting point, given that it may be dependent on the discussion around the committee's responsibilities.
Could we look at what we actually spend and say, let's set the budget?
No, you can't do that because we have projects. So it's not, you can't say that because, like, the first year we had the water fountain, well that's done and dusted, so everything comes up.
No, this current year, what we're likely to spend this year and replicate that rather than what we thought we might have spent 2 years ago.
Okay, that's what you say.
Well, we can't do that here and now. So I would suggest that for the time being, what we put forward to finance management is basically this year's budget for next year. But in the interim, it's important, given there's then going to be that discussion at finance and management, that members of the Climate Emergency Committee give some thought as to whether that is still the right budget, because there'll be an opportunity in that discussion to influence it. Because I'm conscious there's, you know, to a degree, the committee can't achieve anything unless it has some funds with which to do it. It needs funds to pay the salaries, but it also needs funds with which to deliver projects. Now, clearly, we always have that chicken and egg thing. If we don't have projects,
I'd just like to point out to you all, because of the way that the council works, a lot of the time the money comes out of my personal bank account until I get it refunded because of the way it all works, actually. So I'm actually paying for the website, hosting everything, because we don't have credit cards and everything like that. So when I hear about the finances, it's like I'm out of pocket most of the time. So
that shouldn't happen.
well, it does because of the way the
So
council
what do we
works.
do to make that not happen?
well, that's something that needs to get picked up from finance and management, which is not something we can discuss now.
Okay, yes, I agree with your proposal, I second we do that.
Okay, thank you. Everyone else? Yeah, okay. So I think the final issue, that's 100% actually. And then the final issue is just items of publicity, where we talked lots about communications already. And I think, to be honest, we've covered issues when we talked about database and family jubilee. But I would say to members, if you've got a clear idea of what you think the Climate Emergency Committee should look like, what it should be focusing on, if there's actions that you want to pull out that you say we're not achieving this, or how can we achieve those, or you've got views on how we can better engage with communities, then please bring them forward.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, it was a long meeting.
It's not normally like this.
Yeah. Is this why people don't come back?
The irony is there's less of us and this is the longest meeting I've been at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To go to the dentist.
I think the issue in the end as well is that the parish council spend public money raised from the community, so we have lots of like legalities and controls on how we spend our money, how we make decisions and all that, and that does mean that certainly it took me several years